We are now back from a recess and also a short lunch that we were able to have because it was the only time we were able to have lunch. We will now have item number 38, discussion of possible action regarding a new 5-year contract agreement between the Las Vegas Peace Officers Supervisors Association and the City of Las Vegas. $576,000 from the general fund, and can we have someone from staff, please, Mr. Tarwater, on that?
There's a little bit of irony in this. Scott Adams, City Manager. State law, Chapter 241, obligates the city manager to provide a report to the public on the issues of both parties that were discussed during contract negotiations. And this particular agenda item is the labor agreement between the City of Las Vegas and the Las Vegas Peace Officers Supervisors Association. The scope of discussions were a range of articles, 6 articles, 7, 9, 10, 12, 20, 21, regarding compensation, hours of work, holidays, sick leave, discharge and disciplinary procedure, and grievance procedures. The city and the LVPOSA, the union, accepted the fact finder's recommendations, resulting in the contract that you have before you on the agenda today. And the fiscal impact of that contract over the multi-year term of the agreement is $576,000. If you have any questions regarding it, our team is here to answer any questions.
Does anybody on the council have any questions relating to this? Our team, did you have to say anything else? Obviously, you think it's a good contract?
Dan Tarwater, Human Resources Director. I do think it's a good contract, and it looks very much like some of our other contracts here at the city. But most importantly, I wanted to recognize Lieutenant Herman Russell, who is in the audience today. He is the president of LVPOSA. Herman?
Can you raise your hand, or? Oh, there you are. Nice to have you here.
And I just want to, thank them for all the hard work. This was 22 plus sessions, and it's lasted over a 2-year period, so it's been a lot of work.
It's been a lot of work, and it's good that it's where it is now. Thank you very much.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I move for approval.
The motion has been made by the esteemed Councilman Coffin, and the motion is for approval. I said, well, either way. We have an unanimous vote on it. I should have said post, and then now the vote, it has approved unanimously. We'll now move to item number 39, discussion for possible action to approve a petition for writ relief in 180 Land Company LLC versus City of Las Vegas, case number A17-758528-J in the 8th Judicial District Court, and this includes all wards. And is Mr. Jerbick here?
No, Mayor Pro Tem, but I can do the item. Deputy City Attorney Jeff Dorkak for the record. If Mayor Pro Tem or any member of the council wants to discuss this item, we'll have to go into closed session pursuant to NRS 241 because it's ongoing litigation. However, if no discussion is needed and anyone's prepared to give a motion, we can proceed right to the motion out here. And City Attorney's Office recommends approval of this item.
All right, the City Attorney's Office recommends approval. Do I have an any motion from the...
Your Honor, I move for approval. Item 39.
The motion has been made for approval. Will you please cast your vote? Post. And the motion has again been approved unanimously. We'll now move to item 40. which is a discussion for possible action regarding a second amended and restated cooperation agreement between the City of Las Vegas and the City of Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency, in which the city will provide the agency staff assistance, supplies, and services, and agency will reimburse the city for all costs incurred for services. Redevelopment Areas 1 and 2, Wards 1, 3, and 5, Tarkanian, Coffin, and Creer, and the item is related to RDA Item 5. Yes.
Bill Arndt, Director, Economic and Urban Development. This item is related, as you indicated, Mayor Pro Tem, to Redevelopment Agency Number 5, and I would like to incorporate all of my comments from that item herein. This is to fund 3 services for the city using Redevelopment Agency funds. The funds are available, and staff recommends approval. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from council? All right, may I have a motion, please?
Your Honor, I move for approval.
Motion has been made for approval. Please vote and post. And of course, it passed unanimously. Thank you. Item number 41 was, it's not in this book. Is that because we're doing the budget later, or?
Correct. We're trailing that until after item number 69.
Okay, so the budget is being trailed. That's item 41. And so we'll move to item 42, which is discussion for possible action regarding the approval of a tavern limited license, Red Wolf Dead LLC, doing business as Beauty Bar at 517 Fremont Street, Suite number 150, in Ward 3, Mr. Coffin. Yes, Ms. McElhone.
Good afternoon. For the record, Mary McElhone, Deputy Planning Director. The Beauty Bar was given a temporary license by City Council pending the outcome of the suitability investigation, with a condition that the director could issue the permanent license pending a favorable outcome. The suitability report and Roxy Amoroso, the owner, came back from Metro with an outcome that was not favorable, as an area of concern report was issued. The Planning Department is here today to discuss that suitability investigation and request a denial of the permanent license. The Beauty Bar has been operating on a temporary license since they opened August 2nd, 2018, and the following concerns have been identified in the report. On August 6, 2018, 4 days after they opened, Metro responded to a battery call at the Beauty Bar. An argument started with a member of a hired band member and the security guard named Caleb Caldwell. 2 witnesses and surveillance videos confirmed a chokehold tactic was used by the security guard and the band member. And while Metro detectives did deem self-defense was justified, the chokehold was deemed unreasonable and excessive. 2 months later, on October 5th, 2018, Metro responded to another battery call with the same security guard, Caleb Caldwell. He repeatedly punched the victim in the face. Video surveillance revealed the victim never hit or attempted to hit anyone, and the attack was unjustified. The manager of the Beauty Bar, Mr. Wildenbeck, was uncooperative when police officers tried to enter the Beauty Bar and question Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Caldwell was later cited for misdemeanor battery. Mr. Wildenbeck was served with a notice of noncompliance for not going forward as the manager of the Beauty Bar and not updating his work card. Later on in the day, Metro officers conducted a follow-up investigation with the owner of Roxy Amoroso. Ms. Amoroso was served with a notice of noncompliance for duties to cooperate and for an employee being uncooperative with Metro officers during a violent incident, and also was cited with unlawful designated nuisance for an employee being involved in a violent incident causing a public nuisance. On November 2nd, a month later, Metro detectives spoke to Ms. Amoroso, as they were concerned that Mr. Caldwell was still employed after 2 violent batteries had occurred at the location, and the last one even required the victim to be transported to the hospital. Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Wildenbeck were finally let go. Then on November 16, 2018, an undercover detective approached a security guard at the beauty bar and had inquired where he could purchase marijuana in regards to a marijuana dispensary. After finding out that the undercover detective wanted to buy an eighth of an ounce of marijuana, the security guard walked up to the disc jockey who was employed at beauty bar and obtained the marijuana. The security guard then sold 5.4 grams of marijuana to the undercover detective for $30 inside the restroom of the beauty bar. On November 30th, the security guard was arrested by Metro for selling. On December 11, 2018, Metro detectives contacted Roxy Amoroso. Metro had some concerns that they had been notified that the Vagos, an organized motorcycle gang, was hosting its Christmas party on December 15th at the beauty bar. Roxy Amoroso denied any knowledge of this event. She stated it was scheduled behind her back with her previous partner. She had also shared with Metro detectives a membership interest transfer agreement, which was dated December 7th, showing that she had bought her business partner out. The City of Las Vegas Business Licensing Division had no knowledge of this transaction to change ownership, and this is a requirement of licensing. On January 30th, 2019, Ms. Amoroso received a correction notice for not reporting this change of ownership to the City of Las Vegas as required. A recent inspection on March 8, 2019, disclosed a new security company had been hired at the business. However, the security was working without alcohol awareness cards, which are required, and these new employees, were not on the employee list. The bartender also stated to our business license officer that Roxy Amoroso was no longer the owner of the establishment, which indicates that a change of ownership may have taken place a second time, which is not allowed without approval from the City of Las Vegas. So in the 8 short months that this operation has been open, the beauty bar has had problems with the security staff and general management obeying laws and regulations, including incidences that have involved Metro and have included lack of cooperation. Ms. Amoroso has not demonstrated that she is capable of operating a nightclub with a tavern limited license. On Monday, April 1st, an eviction notice was served on the beauty bar issued by the Las Vegas Justice Court. So the beauty bar, as of Monday, is now closed. Ms. Amoroso was probably notified of this meeting today and that her license would be heard before City Council. Unless she showed up in the last few minutes since I've been reading this, she is not here today. Metro is here today. We do have 2 officers that are here that are very experienced with beauty bar and what has been going on, and they're available if you should have any questions for them. Recommendation-wise, we recommend the revocation of the temporary license and the denial of the permanent license. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there anything else you wanted or from anybody else? If not, any questions from the council? And if no questions, then Mr. Coffin, will you make your motion?
Well, it's regrettable, Your Honor, that we've had troubles on East Fremont, and I don't know whether it was a lack of experience on the applicant, but the applicant knew that there would be problems if she didn't observe carefully the rules of how engagements occur between people who work for her and patrons. You know, not very many innocent people down there on East Fremont at any given moment, but it's like anything else. You got to be treated right. It's a condition of our license. So I think your recommendation is to revoke this license. Is that correct?
That is correct. She's operating under temporary, so the motion today would be to deny the permanent license.
Right. Your Honor, I move to deny the permanent license.
The motion has been made. Please vote. Post. And the motion is approved unanimously. We'll now turn to item number 43. Oh, did someone...
Item 43 was held in abeyance.
It's in abeyance. So item number 44, since 43 is obeyed.
Yes.
And item 44 is a public hearing on local improvement district for special improvement district number 1485 Alta Drive landscape maintenance for year 2020, Ward 1.
Good afternoon, Your Honor and Council. Alan Pavelka, City Engineer for the Department of Public Works, and I have with me Alicia Hawk, SID Manager, also with the Department of Public Works. So this district consists of 37 parcels along Alta Drive between Rancho Drive and approximately 275 feet west of Lacey Lane. This SID covers the annual maintenance costs of landscape maintenance and utility services for the period from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th of 2020 of next year. The total assessment will remain the same as it has been in recent years at $75,800 and is paid 100% by the property owners. No written protests have been filed in the city clerk's office.
And we have received no calls pertaining to this. We used to years ago, but we have not. And I think part of it is because in recent years, we've had better gardening. So I just want to let you know that the people who are taking care of that area are doing a good job. And I would also like to emphasize what you said, and that is it's 100% paid by the people who live along that area, so that if anybody feels we favor Alta, I know it was done before I got on the council, but please understand, they pay for that. I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or anything from the people here? Then I make the motion
Public hearing.
that we approve.
It's a public hearing.
And we'll move on to item number 45. No?
You need to open it for a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry, we need to open this for a public hearing? There is nobody who stepped up for a public hearing? So there's nobody else, there's nobody wishing to be heard on this item. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and move on to item number 45.
For item 45, Alan Pavelka, City Engineer for the Department of Public Works. The assessments for the district will be suspended from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th of 2020 due to a surplus of funds acquired through previous assessments. Although no assessments are being levied, NRS 271 requires a district to be levied each year. The maintenance of the district is funded 100% by the property owners through this SID. This public hearing is just a formality to abide by the statutes of NRS 271, and no written protests have been filed by the city clerk's office.
All right, this is a public hearing, so I now declare it open. Is there anybody wishing to make a comment? Seeing none, is there any comment? If not, then let's have your motion.
Your Honor, before we vote, we have to consider voting on 44 first, I think, and then we would do 45. Is that right, Luann?
No, 44 and 45 are report only, so
good.
there's no motion needed on the other one.
Super, thank you.
So we'll now move on to item number 47. Item number 47 relates to boards and commissions. That we have a discussion for possible action regarding the appointment of nominee James Wright to the Southern Nevada Health District Public Health Advisory Board. Laquan McDowell previously held this seat with the term expiring of June 2019, and he has resigned. Unexpired terms on this board must be filled. Mr. Wright is eligible and wishes to be appointed. And on this, I believe, Councilwoman Fiore, you're prepared to make a motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My motion is to approve.
Your motion is for approval?
Yes.
All right, let's vote on the motion. Do I need to do something else? Okay, we're going to wait just a second for technological reasons. We have it now. Please vote on the item. Post.
Well, it does pass unanimously. I'm not sure why it's not showing.
Can you tell us what the vote was?
Unanimous vote in the affirmative.
So the unanimous vote in the affirmative on the motion will now move to item number 48. And this includes recommending committee bills eligible for adoption at this meeting. First, Bill number 2019-6 amends the land use tables contained in the LVMC 19.12.010 to provide that the use crop production is allowed in the C1 and C2 zoning districts as a conditional use, and that was sponsored by Councilman Steven Soroka. Councilman Anthony, would you like to have the bill read?
Yes.
Could we please have the bill read?
Bill number 2019-6, an ordinance to amend the land use tables containing LVMC Section 19.12.10 to provide that the use crop production is allowed in the C1 and C2 zoning districts as a conditional use and to provide for other related matters.
Move for approval.
Let's please, there was a motion for approval. Will we please vote? Post. And the motion carries unanimously. We'll now go to item number 49, Bill number 2019-7. For possible action, it amends LVMC 19.06.060 to reduce the minimum lot size for development within the RE zoning district from 20,000 square feet to 18,000 square feet. It's sponsored by Councilwoman Fiore. Councilman Anthony, would you like to have the bill read?
Yes.
Bill number 2019-7, an ordinance to amend Section 19.6.60 to reduce the minimum lot size for development within the RE zoning district from 20,000 square feet to 18,000 square feet and to provide for other related matters.
Move for approval.
Please vote on the motion. And post.
Hold on.
Oh, you had a question?
I have a lot of questions because I don't understand what this is and what we're trying to accomplish here, and why are we lowering the lot sizes for residential estates zoning, and how does this affect from someone that lives in a rural neighborhood preservation area, and that and a lot of my constituents live in rural neighborhood preservation areas that are looking to maintain that. Why would we go and lower the amount of lot size down to this instead of maintaining what it is, so that we can put more homes on a, you can put 2 more homes on a subdivision versus, is that the case?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, the councilwoman who's sponsoring the bill can, of course, respond. This doesn't necessarily change density in the RNP. It does allow for an adjustment to the development standard from a 20,000 square foot lot to an 18,000 square foot lot, but the density would still be restricted by the general plan designation. So in the case of the RNP, which I believe is at 2 units per acre, that still is the mandate. So while someone could develop technically a smaller lot, they would still have to adhere to the density limitations that are established by the general plan. This 18,000 square foot is consistent with how Clark County does their RE lots, and is the minimum lot size that's allowed under the interlocal agreement that we have with Clark County, particularly affecting the area in the northwest where we've had some annexations, and we still have some owner-initiated annexations to balance out the development between what happens in the county and what happens in the city, and of course the sponsor can add to that.
Yeah, so I just don't think that we should, it is increasing per se density, because if you're taking 2,000 square foot off of a lot size, then potentially if you have 10 lots and that's 20,000 square feet, that means you can put another home or another area, which would in turn increase density. And so I don't believe that we should be trying to increase it. I don't think we should be lowering the minimum lot size. I think 20,000 square feet has been established for RE, and I haven't heard any justification of why we would change that. Does this bring back a different zoning level now from like a RPD 3, or is this?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, through you.
You gotta turn your mic on.
Sorry. So, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, through you, so Councilman, to answer that question, no, this doesn't affect RPD 3, it doesn't affect any other zoning district, it merely adjusts the minimum lot size, and again, that's the thing to stress as well, it's the minimum lot size for a lot that may be developed under the RE residence estates development zoning standard. So it doesn't impact any of the other districts. It doesn't impact the standards for RPD 3 or anything like that.
Yeah, but it technically would increase, though, density. Just my example of if you had 10 homes and you really use 2,000 square feet lots, then you can add another 20,000 square foot lot if you have a 10-lot development.
So, correct, Councilman. So technically, if the underlying general plan did allow for that additional lot to occur, then yes, with this reduction, if you had a parcel big enough that you were, previously you only had 9 lots, and now because of the extra 2,000 per lot, you're able to get to an additional 18,000 square foot lot, then yes, that subdivision would technically have one more developable lot, but it still must adhere to the underlying general plan designation, and
right.
that sets the density limitation.
Yeah, I just don't see any compelling reason why we would change this. I don't.
So, yeah, so the reason why I've asked for this is because generally when we do have people that are working in that ward and constantly comparing what the counties do, with this change, then our staff, it's our norm. It's the same as our interlocal and our county, so it's not constantly staff recommending denial when the county recommends approval. So it's more of a uniform. It doesn't change how we do business in our ward, especially in Ward 6. This is where this big area is. And we don't do a lot of density in Ward 6. Our neighbors dictate that. So if there was an issue, the neighbors would complain. So this is why
Excuse me.
we're doing it.
I couldn't hear if you were finished. I'm sorry. Were you finished? I just wanted to say that I have, as Cedric has, older areas that they don't want to lower the amount that this bill would lower as far as the amount. And I know the county does it, but the county does a lot of things we don't want to do.
So you know what? Why don't we obey this so we can go through it a little bit more? Why don't we obey it until May, and our May meeting, and then we can talk about it a little bit more?
Okay,
Yeah.
could you make a motion?
Yeah, let's make a motion to obey this till May so we can go through it a little bit longer.
One
I-
second, Councilwoman and Mayor Pro Tem, when was this published?
It was published on March 21st.
Okay, yeah, so we're good into May. If you want to set the date, May 1, is that what you want? Well, the motion's to hold in abeyance until May 1st.
That's the motion, and please vote. And post. And we see that unanimously that's approved. So now we'll move to item number 51. Bill 50? I do have that in here. Sorry, it might have gotten stuck. Item number 50, Bill number 2019-8 for possible action. This amends the interim downtown Las Vegas development standards set forth in Appendix F of the Unified Development Code, Title 19, to adopt specific wall and fence standards for Area 2 of the downtown Las Vegas Overlay District. And this is sponsored by Councilman Bob Coffin by request of staff. Councilman Anthony, would you like to have the bill read?
Yes.
Bill number 2019-8, an ordinance to amend the interim downtown Las Vegas development standards set forth in Appendix F of the Unified Development Code, Title 19, to adopt specific wall and fence standards for Area 2 of the downtown Las Vegas Overlay District and to provide for other related matters.
Move for approval.
Please vote. Post. And again, a unanimous approval of this item. And now we move to item number 51, which is Bill number 2019-9 for possible action, it amends LVMC 19.06120 to remove the building height limitation generally applicable to main buildings in the R4 zoning district, and it's sponsored by Mayor Carolyn Goodman. Councilman Anthony, would you like to have the bill read?
Yes. Bill number 2019-9, an ordinance to amend LVMC section 19.6.120 to remove the building height limitation generally applicable to main buildings in the R4 zoning district and to provide for other related matters.
Move for approval.
The motion has been made to approve this item. Would you please vote and post? And the item has passed unanimously. Now we move to item number 52. Bill number 2019-10 for possible action. It amends various provisions of LVMC Title 6 and 19 to establish the licensing and land use means and limitations by which brew pubs and ancillary brew pubs may sell malt beverages for off-premise consumption, sponsored by our favorite drinker, Councilman Bob Coffin.
Seems like a pleasurable kind of motion. I'm all in favor of it.
All right.
I move for approval.
Okay, Councilman Anthony, would you like to have the bill read? I did that a little backwards.
Yes. Bill number 2019-10, an ordinance to amend various provisions of LVMC Title 6 and 19 to establish the licensing and land use means and limitations by which brew pubs and ancillary brew pubs may sell malt beverages for off-premises consumption and to provide for other related matters.
Move for approval. Madam
Did we have someone who wished to speak? Oh,
Madam
yes.
Pro Tem, and I apologize, probably, I was not at council briefings yesterday, which this question probably would have been answered, but can someone explain to me specifically what this is when you say off-premise consumption, and where does this, so you can have a brew pub and you can buy something at the brew pub, and then you can take it off, when you say off-premises, where off-premises?
So Madam Pro Tem, if I may, so yes, so this would allow for them, consistent with state law, for a brew pub that brews their own product to actually sell for consumption at your home, for you to buy their product only at their location and take it home for consumption. So
Like a
that's
growler.
A growler, exactly. So that's
Okay.
the off-premise piece of this. Currently, they can do tastings and things, and they can have a setup at the location for on-premise consumption, but this will allow us to update our language in both the Title 19 and Title 6
Okay.
to allow you, Councilman Cobb, whoever, to go in, you like what they brew, you will be able to take your growler, have it, and take that home.
Okay, so we currently, I know that because I used to run Barley's casinos out in Henderson, and we sold growlers of the beer that was manufactured there. So you're saying currently in the city of Las Vegas, that's not possible? So Chicago, I thought Chicago Brewery over on Durango in Sahara, you can
For
get a
the
growler
record-
already. Is that in the city?
For the record, Mary McElhone, Deputy Planning Director, to you, Councilman, through Mayor Pro Tem Tarkanian. So just a little clarification. Right now, if you're an established brewing your own beer at that location, patrons can come and purchase growlers to leave to take the product home to consume at home. What this actually does is this actually allows a different location. So let's say your Tenaya Creek, which is located in the city, they could open up a second location where they're not brewing, and it would be under beer wine cooler, basically the beer, wine, and cooler sale license, and they could sell for off-site consumption
This one is-
their product. But they
So-
don't, it doesn't have to be brewed on site.
Okay, so Tenaya Creek has a brewery on where they are, and you're saying that if they open up another tavern, some other place within the city, they could brew their brew at here, and then they can ship it over to or tap it at their other location, but then this would allow them to sell a growler at the ancillary location.
Exactly. It also allows, it doesn't have to be originally located in the city. It could be a brewery in Henderson.
Okay.
Anywhere in the state, because it's a state license, and then they could set up an ancillary location in the city of Las Vegas.
Okay, and currently they couldn't do that?
Currently, they cannot do that.
They can only
They
have
to
get a
brew on
growler
site.
from where it's brewed?
That's correct. It
Gotcha.
has to be brewed on
Now,
site.
does it have to be their own product that they put in
Yes,
the
it
growler?
has to be their own product, and
Great.
it is limited to a growler or a six-pack.
Great, thank you for the clarity, and I apologize for it.
You don't have to apologize for inquiry.
Yeah, I
methods.
would have, but if I was yesterday, I would have been there, I would have answered those
And
questions.
we do not have to have public comment at this time, but I'm not going to be like that group in California that got in deep trouble when the poor man couldn't even talk. And I'm going to ask you, would you like to speak?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem and council members, my name is Wendy Forrest. I currently own Craft House Brewery in Henderson, Nevada. So I just wanted to, first of all, thank Councilman Coffin for listening to our concerns about our local industry here in Nevada. We are greatly behind the national trend, but this does allow us to take one step forward and to help us become current with the national trends. So what we're looking to do is open up a secondary tasting room, and the law does not allow us to have people enjoy our product at home.
Thank you very much, and I bet Coffin appreciates that, too.
There is a motion.
Thank you. We have the motion made. Will you please vote? I'm the only one left. All right, everybody has voted for that, again unanimously. And now we'll move to the next item, and that is bill number, this is 53, bill number 2019-11, amends various provisions of LVMC Title VI and Title 19 to establish a new alcoholic beverage licensing category designated Tavern Restricted to be available only along a limited segment of West Sahara Avenue, and to establish licensing, land use, and gaming regulations and restrictions pertaining thereto, sponsored by Councilwoman Lois Tarkanian. Councilman Anthony, would you like to have the bill read?
Yes. Bill number 2019-11, First Amendment, an ordinance to amend various provisions of LVMC Title VI and Title 19 to establish a new alcoholic beverage licensing category designated Tavern Restricted to be available only along a limited segment of West Sahara Avenue, to establish licensing, land use, and gaming regulations and restrictions pertaining thereto, and to provide for other related matters.
Move for approval of the First Amendment.
First Amendment, please cast your vote on the motion. Opposed? And it has been approved unanimously. We will now move to item number 54. And these are recommending committee bills eligible for adoption at a later meeting. Items number 54 and 55, bills number 2018-61 and 2019-5 will be heard at a later meeting, and we will move on to new bills. Item number 56 are new bills. Item number 56, Bill number 2019-12 will be heard at the recommending committee meeting on Monday, April 15th, 2019. City Attorney, would you read the new bill?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. Bill number 2019-12, an ordinance to amend the Town Center Development Standards Manual to allow the use of marijuana dispensary in specified land use districts by means of special use permit, adopt clarifying language regarding the waivability of certain special use permit requirements, and provide for other related matters.
New Bill 2019-12 is assigned to the April 15th, 2019 recommending committee members, Councilman Anthony and Coffin and Councilwoman Fiore. If any so designated are unable to attend, the clerk's office will coordinate finding substitutes as necessary at the mayor's direction. Thank you. The morning session of the City Council meeting is now in recess. We'll start the next session at 11 a.m. I just said that for fun. I just thought you'd like to see where we are on it. So we will now move on to the Planning Committee.
Item 57.
You know, we have to have a little fun. Item number 57, yes. This is for possible action. Any items from the 11 a.m. session that the council staff and/or the applicant wish to be stricken, tabled, withdrawn, or held in abeyance to a future meeting may be brought forward and acted upon at this time.
I have two items. Item number 66, SUP 75033, applicant owner Precision Assets, 308 Wisteria Avenue. The applicant has asked that be obeyed till May 1st, 2019. And item number 67, SUP 75150, applicant owner Anna Ortega, 8900 Condoti Court. Applicant has asked that be withdrawn without prejudice, and that's my motion.
Please vote. I don't have a place to vote if, okay. And post.
Jeff, can you post it? Well, that did pass unanimously.
It passed unanimously. We have a little bit of technology today that just feels free-spirited. Now we are on item number 58. Items number 58 through 63 are on the consent agenda. They're considered to be routine, and they're recommended for approval by the Department of Planning. Mayor Pro Tem, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda item numbers 58 through 63?
Move for approval.
Motion has been made to vote for approval. Please cast your vote. Post. And we now have a unanimous vote on those on the consent agenda. Moving therefore to numbers 64 and 65. This 64 is ZON 75115 on a request for a rezoning from an R1 single-family residential to a PO professional office. Item number 65, SDR 75117 on a request for a site development plan review for a proposed two-story, 6,500 square foot office building with waivers of Title 19.08 development standards and Title 19.12 parking standards. The applicant is Sylvia Esparza Law, and the owner is Downtown Sanchez LLC on .16 acres at 728 Garces Avenue, R1 single-family residential. Zone proposed is the PO professional office. The Planning Commission and staff recommend approval on both items. These are in Ward 3, Mr. Coffin, and our public hearings, which I now declare open. Mr. Summerfield?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, so the rezoning is...
Excuse me. Sorry, your mic's not on, Director. Yeah, I got it.
We can't hear it.
I keep clicking it, it's not working. It's that technology problem she was talking about. The, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, so the rezoning of the subject site to PO, professional office, is appropriate within this area of the Founders District, and the proposed office adheres to the objectives of the Vision 2045 Master Plan for downtown Las Vegas. Therefore, staff has recommended approval of the requested site development plan review subject to conditions. In this request, there's a reduction in, there's a waiver for parking. Parking being proposed is comparable to other projects that have been approved via variances in the past. And that is one of the distinctions on this project. Now that this is in the downtown master plan area, the standards that apply here are a little different than how they've applied in the past. And so that's why you're seeing transition from older development patterns to this. And so again, this is in keeping with the master plan vision for the Founders District that has been endorsed and adopted by the City Council, and so staff has recommended approval.
And we have the applicant here,
Yes.
and we'd like to have you speak to the council.
Thank you. Good afternoon. A little bit about myself. My name is Sylvia Esparza, and I'm a mother of 4, 2 children of my own, 2 stepchildren. I'm an attorney. I'm an immigration activist. I'm also a native born of Las Vegas, and we're really excited to move to this proposed location for a couple reasons. One is because most of the client base needs assistance, and we are underserving the community as it stands right now in Las Vegas with immigration attorneys. The ICE office is downtown, the immigration court is downtown, and the federal courthouse is also downtown. There are major transportation routes that make it accessible for the community to access legal services. There are not that many immigration attorneys in Las Vegas, so we're bringing some legal diversity to downtown. Also, by being part of the revitalization, we're also bringing more jobs to the community and also a needed service that is in really high demand. Another reason for the expansion that is really close to my heart is to be able to do more community service by doing free workshops, doing some trainings and some community meetings that I haven't been able to do because my office is very small. So expanding it to 6,000 square feet would really allow me to do that, to partner up with other community members. Also, when we hired Cora Architecture, which will, I'll hand it over to Alexis Bailey in a second, we looked at the surrounding neighborhood to make sure that it was consistent with the 2045 master plan, and it is really consistent with the objectives and the goals and what we're trying to do for the future, and you know, that's why the staff recommended approval. So just thank you for listening.
All right, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Nathan Taylor, 8414 West Farm Road, representing the applicant. I'm going to be very brief, which I know you guys will like. I wanted to first say that we're really excited about this project. We're just respectfully asking that you follow staff's recommendation for approval and Planning Commission's recommendation for approval. We did hold a neighborhood meeting. 6 people attended. We respect some of the neighbors' concerns, but we just ask that you follow staff's recommendation. This is a beautiful project, and I will turn it over now to Alexis Bailey, who will talk about the actual design.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alexis Bailey. I'm part of the design team. We designed the building in an effort to complement the already amazing projects that are going on downtown and the urban fabric that exists there. We used high contrast, neutral colors that would enrich the design without straying from those historical buildings. We also have what we're calling the porch, which is a beautiful entrance here. That is a nod to the Founders District. The lower level will be the parking garage, but we're screening that with box hedges, which will add a nice organic element to it and also a natural pop of color. It's also going to complement the pedestrian realm that's going to be added as part of the project to the front of the building that runs along Garces. Currently, there's just small shrubs there now, so we're going to be adding an 8-foot wide walkway as well as mature trees and additional plants beneath. The entire second floor is going to be the offices as well.
Okay. We do have some people who wish to speak on this item. First, Roy McMahon. Are you in the audience, Roy? Uh-huh.
There are a number of us here, Your Honor.
Well, I have Roy McMahon, I have Robert Marshall, and I have Craig Sutton. And I don't know if you're all together or separate, but
Yeah, we're all
you
together.
each have an opportunity to speak.
If I have something that needs to be shown on the screen, do I need to be over here? In the middle, thanks. Craig Sutton, 9420 West Sahara, on behalf of the adjacent landowner, who will come up right after me, Roy McMahon. The opportunity to have the zoning changes, we're in complete agreement with that. The issues that we have is non-conforming parking, where there's preferred 22 spots, but only 9 are going to be on the site. My applicant, or the owner next door, all the additional parking for this will go in front of his building along Garces and overload an area that already has some difficulties with parking.
I'm sorry, sir. Could you reintroduce yourself?
Yeah, Craig Sutton, 9420 West Sahara. Then the building that is directly adjacent is 1,362 square feet. There are 7 parking spots in the back, 2 on the driveway, so there's as many parking spots. On our site, our building is only 1,362 square feet. This building at 6,500 square feet has only 9 spots, the exact same number. We're in favor of the 2045 plan, and we're actually in favor of the zone change. The issue is the size of the building. What we have here is the Founders District where we're at, and going to a different city meeting, we noticed that adopting soon is a form-based code. The form-based code has a little bit of an overlay determining where each of the types of T3, T4, T5, we're probably a little bit of a blend between a T3 and a T4. And I have a couple of examples here. Showing here a T4, the actual urban core. The T5 is much more dense than what we have here. That would be kind of the footprint placement of the building that is proposed, which would be something like the low-rise. The T4 is a little bit less dense. We're more along the lines of a T3 building, which is a residential look, and we do believe the Founders District is in the T3. There's a little bit of ambiguity on that, so I'm not 100% sure, but we'd look for a little bit of clarity. Our issue is not with the zone change. If an application can be split to a zone change, we're 100% in favor of the zone change. We're not in favor of the building being oversized for the site that it sits on. The site next door, where my friend's building is at, would have a 32-foot wall with an only 3-foot setback. So the wall would cast a shadow over the building and not be anything that's conforming to the general building sizes for the area.
All right, thank you. Did Mr. McMahon or Mr. Marshall? Yes. And give your name, please. Roy McMahon?
Yes, and my address is 724 South 8th Street.
Right.
I own the lot and building next door to the site on the north side. I have been a business owner on 8th Street for the past 25 years, and I actually own 2 buildings on 8th Street. I'm in favor of growth and development, and I understand the need sometimes for a zoning change, but not as drastic as the size and scope of this non-conforming design. This design creates a building with a large 30 to 35 foot high wall with only a 3-foot property line setback next to my property. The wall runs the entire length of my south side of my property line for 140 feet from the front sidewalk to the alley at the rear. This will block completely the sun on our site and any visibility to the corner from my building. This design will create a blemish for the neighborhood. There are no other buildings in the immediate area of similar design. And you have to go north of Clark Street to find another building like this. This is, let's see here. This street and those around it mostly consist of residences that were converted to professional use. All you need to do is drive down the street to appreciate it. This area is known as a T4 neighborhood in the Founders District area of the Las Vegas City Master Plan. I quote, small to medium building footprints and medium intensity building types. So a massive building really doesn't fit in. Professional zoning in this area requires the maintenance of the residential character of the area. To achieve this goal, you need setbacks, landscaping, and parking, not zero lot line. This proposal will feature a garage that empties right onto the street. There are no buildings like that in the area. Like I said, I'm in favor of development, but this proposal needs to be redrawn to fit the site and the neighborhood. A building this size needs literally twice the lot. My neighbors have built large new buildings of similar size as being proposed here on larger lots with proper setbacks and parking, and they look beautiful. This building, though new and as proposed, will bring down values of the other buildings on 8th Street just by the unconnected look that it will have to the rest of the neighborhood. Its design would fit best in a T5 zone, which would be 4th Street or 3rd Street North. This brings me to the parking issue. As you all know, this has always been a problem downtown, and we've been dealing with it forever. 6,500 square feet with 15 offices in this building, a conference room, receptionist as well, with only really 8 parking spots and 1 handicap, where 22 should be the code. Will they be carpooling? I really doubt it. Do they expect not to have any clients visiting their office? When I opened my business next door on the exact same size lot, I was required to provide 9 parking spots for my building, and it's 1,362 square feet. I did it to meet code, and I met code. It has 3 offices, kitchen, reception, in 1,362 square feet. But 6,500 square feet on the same lot is crazy. I support the city master plan for mixed use. I support any creative use that is at least compatible and able to support daily staff and client parking. Currently, limited street parking is available due to owners of both aging single-family homes and small businesses. An objective is walkable use, but the use as a giant office will most likely produce few walking employees or clients. I would be glad to support a new building, one that is significantly smaller and like the other buildings in the area in size and character. Thank you.
You're welcome. Could I ask planning, is a variance requested for only the 3 feet? I thought we had 5 feet between a wall and a house.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, so there's no variance here because this is in the downtown master plan. This is an area of transition where you are going from some older development standards from when, like the parking standard, for instance. The parking standard that was quoted in our staff report would be if we treated it as if it was standard suburban type development, 22 spaces would be required at that square footage. Taking into account the location and the fact that it's in the downtown master plan area, that's why staff supported the request to have 9 parking spaces. So for instance, in this case, they are requesting as a part of this action a waiver to allow a 3-foot rear yard setback as a part of the request.
So you are giving a waiver for that setback?
Correct. There is a waiver as a part of that
And how about
request.
for the parking? Because it is hard to park in that area.
They are, as a part of this request, asking where the code would otherwise require, I believe it's 22 spaces, to allow them to have 9 spaces. So that is
Less
a part
than
of this
half.
request. Yes, again, consistent with other requests in the area, and again, consistent with the fact that in downtown, part of the vision that the council has adopted is that we are going from a less parking or auto-intense activity on individual lots and more to communal parking, more other modes of accessing the site like bus and things of that nature.
Tell me, are we going to it, or are we wishfully thinking that the public is going for it?
Well, again, this is one more time, this is a district in transition, so it's starting that, and you can see, again, not necessarily on this block, but on other blocks north and south of this block, where some of that transition has already occurred to larger projects, larger buildings, less parking on site, and more expectation of using communal parking or other modes of transportation. This block hasn't had that on this frontage, but again, just south of Garces on the opposite corner, we have a larger building. Additionally, north of this site, we have several other. The transition we're seeing is more from a law office to a law firm office. And a law firm generally requires more people and therefore bigger offices, whereas the home conversions were more able to accommodate a law office or a single practitioner type practice.
And you're now using the form-based code there?
We are not yet using the form-based code here.
Wondered.
Yeah, no. So that's another thing I want to be clear on, and I'm overjoyed with the fact that the community is embracing that and using that as their examples. We have not deployed form-based code here yet. The Founders District is one of the districts we would be looking to do a form-based code, but we do not have that standard yet. As the one gentleman indicated, we have to do the calibration to determine, what exactly the transect would look like and what standards we would bring forth. Whether it's going to be in the 4 or the 5 range is still up in the air.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, that we had Roy, right? Roy was last. So, oh, ma'am, did you turn in
I did.
You did?
I did.
I don't
Trish
have
Levitt
it,
is
but
my
that's
name.
all right. Tell us your name and please proceed.
My name is Trish Levitt.
Yes, that's
Hi,
right.
Lois.
Hi. I didn't even recognize you down there.
It's my new hairdo for the day.
Okay. Please proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Trish Levitt. My husband and I, Andrew Levitt, own a law firm at 633 South 7th Street for a good while. Anyways, and then we also have one next door to that, which is 627 South 7th. And then we have a residential at 621 South 7th Street as well. We have 4 parking spots at our law office, 3 in the front portion and also 1 on the driveway for a total of 4. And additionally, off the back of the building, we also have 1 handicap parking space and 2 additional spaces. Along Garces, a lot of our clients are able to park on Garces on both sides because that is not metered. We've owned the law office since 1985, at which point we turned into a commercial building. We are against the size of the proposed building and the restraints that would come with the proposed request. Parking is a major issue. And if this building is allowed to be built, it will destroy the value of the surrounding properties, including my properties on South 7th Street as well as 8th Street and Garces.
So you obviously do not approve of this. It sounds like it looks like a beautiful project.
It really is.
It's a beautiful project, but you're feeling it's overbuilt.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And now this is Robert, I'm assuming?
Robert March, for your honor.
Yes.
If I may, I have come here with the names of 42 signatures in the neighborhood. Is there a way to distribute this to the council?
Yes, there is.
Thank you. These are the names of 42 of the neighbors in the community. These are people who own land in the community or work in the community or live in the community. The community being just simply the block of 7th Street and the block of 8th Street. So these are all people who are within 150 to 200 yards of this building of this proposed building on a daily basis. Can I go to the overhead?
Yes, certainly. It's right there. You just place it on there. That's right. We can see it.
This is a building that I built directly across the street from what is proposed. This is a 6,600 square foot building. The building that you see before you, my building, is the same size as the building that is being proposed. The distinction is the building that is being proposed sits on half the land of the building you see. In other words, the proposal does not adhere to any setbacks at all, and it does not adhere to parking. And the proposed building will destroy the value of the properties around it if it is allowed. This is Don Campbell's building, built a block away. He also adhered to parking. I'm sure there's a few waivers, but he adhered to parking and setbacks. This is Lloyd Baker's building, who is a few blocks away. He adhered to parking and setbacks. If I could express anything to you, and this is the building that you're looking at, which looks nothing like the community. It does not adhere to proper setbacks or parking. what you're really looking at is, and they're asking for a waiver of 13 parking spaces for this building. And so what they're really saying is that every little house that could be developed in the downtown community should have an entitlement or an allocation of 22 parking spaces. And if you start running the numbers, the minute you build a few of those, you destroy the value of everything around you in the community. And so as a community, we are very strongly against this. I will note for you that former City Councilman Wolfson has voiced an opposition to this. I will note that Don Campbell and Lloyd Baker, and the Kinney family, everybody that has built in this neighborhood recently has voiced an opposition to this, particularly with signatures. And I thank you for hearing me. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions from the council? Is there anybody else who, from the audience that wishes to be heard on this item? All right, Councilman Coffin, do you have a motion?
Your Honor, I have looked at this now for a couple of months, trying to figure out how to do it. I've heard from all 42 people, I think by phone or by letter, so, and a lot of them are my friends of long standing. But we're in a bit of a box here because there is parking on the street. I've driven down there quite a few times, and generally speaking, the parking along Garces and on 8th is abundant. On the other hand, I'm sure there are times when it could get crowded. But the thing is that I feel like I'm in a bit of a box here because the application was taken and found to be in order by our staff. The Planning Commission examined it thoroughly and approved it unanimously. I don't know what objections were raised at the Planning Commission, but it has received this kind of approval from people that know the law, they know our ordinances, and the fact that we're in a transition. And I think the word transition may not have ever been communicated to the people who opposed it, and that is that it's happened, it's been happening. Robert, tell me why in the world we took this.
Are you so forward?
Yeah, because I see the thing is you gave them a way to go because you had to, I think, is kind of where I'm looking. Is that correct?
I apologize, sir. I couldn't quite hear you with the air
The
blowing.
permission, the process moving forward, yeah, it looks like it's too small of a lot in a sense, but we don't mandate parking in that area. We don't really mandate. We have it, but we exempt it, correct?
Correct. Well, so what we have is, we don't have an automatic application of our parking standard. That used to be the language. Now what we say is, because this is in what we call Area 2, so the Founders District is Area 2, this is an area that wasn't previously covered by the Centennial Plan, but is a part of the downtown master plan area. So we haven't updated those standards yet. We're incrementally working through that process. And so what we allow, what the council has adopted is an ability for people to ask for a waiver of those parking standards. And staff, you know, again, if we felt that the project as proposed was underparked, we would recommend denial, as that would be the situation. Again, looking at the history in this area on 7th Street, on 8th Street, we have a number of variances that have been approved by this council, past councils, going back 84, 86, 88, the 90s, into the 2000s, and even fairly recently, to allow variances for parking here, understanding that this is an area immediately adjacent to downtown that is transitioning from the old residential neighborhood that it used to be into the law offices that still have some residences interspersed in there, as was mentioned. Right over on 7th, there is still folks that are living in one of those single-family homes, but it is definitely an area, as I said, in transition, where parking is available on the street, as you would expect in a lower intensity but still urban area that this is. And based on the program, 9 spaces is probably appropriate for this location, which is why staff and the Planning Commission had recommended approval of this item.
Mr. Calvin, if I might make a comment, just as much as the parking, I'm concerned with the size and how it impinges on the other buildings next to it. And you know, it's a modern building. One of the draws of downtown is the older buildings they've taken, and they make them beautiful and useful, and it seems you've got a lot of it on 7th and 8th. And now what you're doing is you're putting a really modern building in among the others. Well, that's one thing, that's a matter of choice. But to impinge so closely on the other lots, I'll tell you what, if I lived there, if I had a business there, I wouldn't like it. And I don't think any of these people would like it if they had it that close to them, but maybe they don't care, I don't know. I'm sorry, I just...
We could always call for more testimony on that, too, if you want.
Yeah, well,
it's all right.
and you know, we talk about transition. Well, where are you transitioning? I thought we were transitioning our downtown area, taking some of our older buildings, which are beautiful, renovating them. And to me, well, that's what I tried to do on Charleston. I didn't have much, and we have quaint little buildings that are offices. I don't see it, but I know it's your district.
Just address some of your concerns, just because I think it's, we obviously appreciate the neighbors' concerns, but I think that simply it's just not true. If you could see the camera, this is Mr. Marshall's building on the right-hand side, and this is another building on the left-hand side. This is on 8th and Garces. So there is currently a very large building taking up several lots, and it is a modern building. This is the back end.
And how many lots does yours take?
It takes up one lot.
See, that's the
But,
difference.
I mean,
The
I
one
guess-
lot and the several lots, I think, is the difference.
Right, but it
I mean,
takes
as
up
far
the
as
same
I'm
percentage.
concerned.
It's maximizing those 3 lots. And the front of it is also modern. And then in regards to the renovation, there's the 6th and Bonneville, which is also modern, and it's maximizing also, taking up all of the street.
This is on
We're
6th.
requesting lots of waivers, so the trend is towards having some modern buildings. But even if this wasn't the trend, this was already there. 703's already been there. It's been there for many years. It's there right now, and they approved it. This is not, so our building is nothing really different.
I don't know, but I think the city should pave that street. Re-oil it or reseal it or something. I'm sorry I interjected, Mr. Coffin, but I just wanted to point out those questions.
That's okay, because it doesn't look like it needs it, but at least our maintenance is up to date because it's not getting any worse. That's why you see that sealer. Robert, do you have anything to add?
Again, Councilman, this is in keeping with the transition. To the Mayor Pro Tem's point, it is a different scale compared to a couple of the neighboring buildings, but we've seen that every time one of these buildings goes in, it is at a different scale than the neighboring buildings, and so we're going to see that effect occur in this district as it evolves, as it continues to grow, and those businesses continue to grow, and they kind of grow out of that footprint. To the Mayor Pro Tem's point, in this district, we will probably see quite a bit of this tension between the adaptive reuse of existing buildings and requests for new buildings that may have a modern or may harken back to an older architectural style. But that's what's going to happen in the Founders District. It's just the way the development is kind of progressing.
All right, thank you. So there is no mandate to change or to have an appearance as a residence, maybe a large residence, but nevertheless.
Not for this district, not at this time. As we move into the form-based code and we're looking at those standards, as we hear from the community, there may be some interest in doing some of that, but as it sits right now, we don't have any standard on the book that would require that.
Thank you. Your Honor, I don't think I have much choice except to go against my friends, which is to say this is in transition, and transition means a lot of things, and it probably was announced to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission may have heard the same arguments and voted unanimously for whatever their reasons were. But I'm going to go ahead and move for approval.
All right, Councilman Coffin, that's your motion. We watch planning very carefully in Ward 1, by the way, with our older districts. And let's vote on the motion, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Thank you, Councilman Coffin.
And it has passed, and now congratulations. And I hope you consider those neighbors as you build, and we'll move on to the next item.
That's 65. That's the related item.
Oh, we need a second motion on 65, please, Mr. Coffin.
Move for approval.
He has moved for approval. Please vote. And post. And the vote remains the same. It passes, and we will now move on to item number 66, 67. And the subject is SUP 75150, an abeyance item. And there is
Madam
a
Mayor Pro
public
Tem,
hearing.
that item you took care of in housekeeping. That item was
So
withdrawn.
that's taken care of?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Item number 68, WVR 75200. A public hearing, the applicant owner, Michael Eric Catmull, for possible action on an appeal of the denial by the Planning Commission on a request for a waiver to allow a 3-foot side yard setback where 5 feet is required and 0 parking spaces where 4 are required for a proposed 2-family dwelling at 415 North 9th Street, R3, medium density, residential zone, Ward 5, Creer.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Demmel. I am here representing the owner of 415 North 9th Street, Michael Eric Catmull. We are requesting a waiver for 0 parking spaces where 4 are required. I'm sure all of you are aware that the revitalization that's taking place in this area, and he would love to be a part of it.
Can you hear?
So his plan...
Excuse me, ma'am. Could you, we cannot hear well.
Sorry, is this better? Okay. So his plan is to renovate the property and turn it into a duplex, which happens to follow the pattern of the neighborhood, as there are 2 duplexes and a 4-plex within a mile of this property. Please keep in mind that all renovations will be interior only. Given the fact that each unit will only have 1 bedroom, Mr. Catmull does not suspect the number of cars to increase versus a single-family home, which it is currently. Also, if you take a look, the 2 properties next door also rely on street parking as they don't have any driveway. So this is our property currently. As you can see, we have half a driveway. The neighbor to the left has no driveway or any parking on the premises, and the neighbor next to them. So the side and rear neighbor have no complaints of this renovation. As you can see, the rear neighbor actually wrote an email to Councilman Creer regarding this issue. And Mr. Catmull has explored the idea of using the rear yard for parking. Unfortunately, because the neighbor to the right of us, or to the left of us, depending on how you look, their side yard is actually going over the property line from Mr. Catmull's property, and which I found on the county assessor's website, which if you can look here. So the way that it is this is the neighbor's house, and this line would be where our property line is. Oh, there you go. So as you can see, our property line is going over their side yard. Is it?
Thank you very much.
So, and Mr. Catmull would really avoid wanting to cause any distress to that neighbor by having them remove their side yard. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Summerfield?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, so the applicant is proposing to convert a single-family residence into a duplex residence as indicated. The existing structure does not meet the required setbacks from the side and rear property line, and no parking is provided on site. As the site is located in Area 2 of the Downtown Las Vegas Overlay District, these discrepancies have been addressed via the waiver request rather than a variance. As a waiver, it is not necessarily subject to the same determinations as a variance. However, the applicant has to provide has provided no evidence of a hardship related to the site to warrant upgrading the site from a single-family residence into a duplex, and therefore staff has recommended denial as these, the exacerbation here with no parking is completely self-imposed. Thank you.
All right, the Planning Commission has voted 6-1. Staff recommends denial. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here other than the applicant who wishes to speak?
Previously, we did have the neighbor that has his house and his fence built on our property. He did come down, if you remember. If everybody remembers, he was here saying he didn't want to have his property torn down. I really don't want to cause any distress to him.
Am I losing my hearing, or are you having difficulty down there too? I'm sorry.
I think that's been all day, actually, with those microphones.
All day we've had that,
Yeah,
haven't we?
those microphones are not,
Our microphones, I should have said.
are not turned up enough. Luckily, I don't have that problem. Mind if I take over, Madam Mayor? Or are we,
Oh,
are
no,
we-
no, certainly. I just couldn't hear. And
Yeah,
and
it's-
I didn't want
it's
to
not-
say anything
yeah.
because of my age. I didn't want to
No, it's not you. So, Madam Mayor Pro Temp, I want to move for approval on this. I did speak with the gentleman and his team. I do believe there's a hardship there with the side lot that's there. In downtown is booming. We need to get this building revitalized. So, if there's no other discussion, I can move for approval.
All right, the motion has been made for approval. Any other discussion from the council? Please vote. Something has been wrong with our mics, and they should be looked at for the next meeting. Well, you see how needs differ in wards. The difference between the one ward and the other ward is very interesting because
You mean some can hear and some can't?
Mayor Pro Tem?
I can't hear.
yes, we have we voted?
Yes.
Post?
The vote passes unanimously. For some reason, the posting function is not working.
We better have somebody look at the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Because we've been having trouble with that all day, so you're very fortunate. Thankful to
Thank you very
Councilman
much.
Creer.
Thank you.
He really helped you out there, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Can I just ask, did we do item number 67? Did we, not you, sir. You leave now because you're ahead. That was withheld without prejudice. Okay, and we did 68, and now we're on 69. SDR 75333, applicant owner NSA Property Holding LLC, for possible action on a request for a site development plan review for a proposed 302-unit, 39,400 square foot mini storage facility with a waiver to allow a 0-foot perimeter landscape buffer along the west, south, and east property lines where 8 feet is required, and a 10-foot perimeter landscape buffer along the north property line where 15 feet are required. On the perimeter landscape buffer along the north property line, or 15 feet is required on 1.49 acres at 3301 Meade Avenue, M Industrial Zone, Ward 1, Tarkanian. And could we have the applicant give us the information, please?
Certainly. My name is Michael Pansero. My address is 7485 West Azure. I am the architect representing the owner, Store America.
All right, did you want to tell us anything about the
Certainly.
project?
So the owner had previously a 2-story building here that was in some form of dilapidation. So they've, in an effort to help revitalize the neighborhood and improve their asset, they've gone through and we've already removed the existing building and we're putting a building up roughly the same size and footprint. We will be enhancing some of the landscaping and I won't say off-site, but the perimeter public adjacent features for the site.
Right, and I and my staff did visit your area on Mead, and we saw you having almost an impossibility to put landscape on certain sides, and none of the others near you have landscaping along the sides or the back. So we understood that problem. However, we did ask planning to make sure that you have, an enhanced landscape in front, because we are trying to build up the looks of the area, even though right now it just looks industrial. We wanted to make it look as nice as possible, and the only way we can on your property is in the front area.
Yes, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and we've spoken with the applicant, and we've requested that we get some additional trees within the front buffer, and they've agreed to that. And when I do my staff report, I have a condition change to articulate that.
So does the applicant approve of that condition of extra lush landscape in front?
My understanding is, yes, my staff reached out, and we're requesting additional trees within that landscape buffer, and we believe that provides that more lush landscaping that you've requested.
Okay. And did you have any problem with that?
No, that's totally correct. I was contacted. I did reach out to the owner. It's our understanding that we're going to put 4 more trees in the front to further enhance that, and my client has no objections and would gladly do so.
You'll be the best-looking lot there on Mead. Okay.
I do agree that to be correct.
This is a public hearing. I now declare it open. Well, you did it already, and Mr. Summerfield spoke already. Did you want to speak any more?
Let me just give the official staff report. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, so the subject site was previously developed as a mini storage facility per a plot plan review and special use permit from 1988. Staff has determined that the proposed project is compatible with the surrounding development in the area. Further, staff finds that the requested waivers to allow the reduced landscape along the west, south, and east perimeter will have a minimum negative impact to the surrounding industrial area, as Mayor Pro Tem, you yourself have already discussed. Therefore, staff has recommended approval of the project subject to conditions. Staff would like to do, if approved, we would request that an amendment be made to Condition 7 to include the following additional language. The technical landscape plan shall include the following changes from the conceptual landscape plan. Add 1 24-inch box tree to the landscape buffer west of the north drive aisle, and 3 24-inch box trees to the landscape buffer east of the north drive aisle. And with that, we recommend approval.
Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to be heard on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and my motion is for approval. So please vote.
Subject to the amended condition.
Oh, yes, subject to the amended condition. Vote and post if we can. All right, the motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, good luck to you.
Appreciate it.
And now we move to item 70. Is that correct? We were on 69? Are we, well, I thought the budget was at the very end. Have we reached the end? Oh, excuse me, the end of planning. So guess what? We get to hear the budget with all those exciting numbers and not enough money. Thank you, Gary. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. For the record, I'm Gary Ameling, your Chief Financial Officer. And let's see if we got the slideshow up here. Don't see it. Okay, there we go. First off, as way of introduction, I'd first like to recognize and give thanks to Finance Director Vanetta Appleyard and the folks in the Finance Department, as well as the department heads and their staff that worked tirelessly in putting together this tentative budget for fiscal year 2020. Together with the City Manager's Office staff, we believe that we put together a budget that responds to all of the things that are shown on this slide, primarily your council priorities, the citizen survey, and the employee engagement survey. Unfortunately, as we've talked about as part of our budget discussions over the course of the last 12 months, we are finding ourselves in a position where we don't have enough funding to be able to fund everything that we would like to. So we've had to make some hard decisions in putting together the budget. Our emphasis continues to be on expansion and revenue development in priority areas, primarily in public safety and homeless issues. Although I will point out at the beginning of the presentation that we have not fully funded all the things we'd like to in terms of homeless issues. That's why we submitted a bill draft request to the state legislature to try to add to our revenue portfolio to be able to fully
I think
fund.
you have to speak closer to the mic. We're having trouble today.
Yeah,
And this is
unfortunately,
very
it is-
important information I know you have.
Microphones are better for shorter people, so I apologize.
I know. That's the problem you have if you want to be
I may have to
tall.
stand up taller and stretch every now and then. It-
If you just stand straight and look at it, you will be.
Yeah. It's too far away, unfortunately.
Talk over it.
The speaker will work.
I will do the best I can to stay close to the microphone.
Better.
He stands, speaks
Oh.
over the phone.
As we've discussed, we are doing whatever we can to try to address our structural budget
That helps them
deficit.
too.
We've talked about our vacancy management system. We'll be talking about that in some of the slides that come forward. We are looking for new revenue sources, and then we did put together the Team 2020 effort, which we talked about in your briefings this week, that is yielding some results, although some of the results that we're hoping to yield from that effort won't be realized until either next year or perhaps other fiscal years down the road. First up, we'd like to give you a little bit of background information about how we're performing for this current fiscal year. So far this fiscal year, I would say that the economy has been performing pretty well. Our revenues have been coming in above budget. We're currently projecting to end the fiscal year about $17.7 million above budget. As we've talked about in your council briefings, consolidated tax has been performing above budget. We're currently projecting a $6.2 million surplus in that account. Property tax, we're about on target with the budget. Licenses and franchises, we're about $6 million above budget. And then other revenue sources, a combined about $5.2 million above budget. On the expenditure side, we're currently underrunning the budget. Our estimate for year end is about $2.2 million. Primarily the savings on that, in that regard are the result of the frozen positions as a result of our position freezes. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the later slides in the presentation. We are recommending the use of some of that money to try to fund one-time requests that were asked for as part of the FY20 budget. Also to fund capital projects that don't have other funding sources available to fund them, and to help build up our reserves, particularly in the liability fund and the employee benefits internal service fund. Looking at the fiscal year 20 projections, for consolidated tax, we are expecting to see growth continue. However, I will point out that the budget now basically is in expansion, but we are likely to see at some point that expansion to end. In fact, this June, we will pass the expansion that started in March of 1991 and ran through March of 2001, which was a 10-year expansion period. This June, the current expansion will pass that expansion period and become the longest expansion since World War II. Most economists are predicting that at some point, probably in the next 2 years, that expansion will come to an end, either through a slowdown or perhaps entering into a recession, although most economists are not predicting that it would be a very deep recession. And so we are building that into our 5-year forecast, but we don't see that being a major issue in fiscal year 2020. In terms of property tax caps, the primary caps are 3% for residential and 8% for non-residential properties. Because of the secondary cap formulas for fiscal year 2020, that will be the full 3% cap on the residential property, but the non-residential property would cap at 2 times the CPI, which is 4.8%. With new construction activity that's going to be rolling into the assessment roll, we are estimating a 4.5% growth for over fiscal year 2019. We are bringing forward expanded requests in your priority areas, and right now, currently, the budget is showing a surplus of $5 million, which we're recommending to file for the tentative budget. And that excess is primarily due to our frozen list, which currently stands at about $7.6 million. Looking at a little more detail on the revenue side, I mentioned C-Tax. We'll have some slides that look at that in a minute. Property tax, we did see an assessed value increase of 9% for this coming fiscal year, but again, those tax caps are restricting that growth, and so the excess amount that's over and above the caps becomes what's known as abated tax. And I'll show you that in the property tax slide, but that abated tax will now be up to $40.7 million. That's an increase of $7.2 million over the amount for fiscal year 19. In licenses and franchises, we are projecting a slight decrease for this coming fiscal year. The primary reason for that is due to some one-time monies which came in during fiscal year 19, which we're not anticipating would be repeated in fiscal year 20. Fines and charges for services and other revenues are expected to increase by 11.4%. The primary driver there is the Medicaid monies that we're anticipating to come in that we're planning to receipt into the general fund to help support public safety operations. That's about $6.5 million. The rest of the Medicaid monies are anticipated to help support capital projects and vehicle replacements and will show up in other funds. And then the contribution for the redevelopment agency is estimated at $1.9 million, and that's the item that you approved in your RDA meeting this morning. This first chart in the presentation looks at the consolidated tax history, starting with fiscal year 2006 on the left-hand side of the chart and going through the projected budget for fiscal year 2020 on the right side of the chart. The one thing you will note, and I know some of the numbers are probably not readable from where you're sitting, but one thing you will note is the steep decline going into the Great Recession. We were sitting at $264.3 million in fiscal year 06. Just 4 years later, that had dropped right about $60 million, or 24%, down to $201.5 million. And that's why we get concerned when we talk about the budget, because many of our revenue sources, particularly the largest ones that we depend on, are very economically sensitive. And so when the economy does go through a negative cycle, that revenue can either slow down or decline. In fact, when we saw that decline of $60 million, obviously we had to take dramatic actions to be able to continue operations of the city. It did take, one thing other to note on this is it did take a full 10 years to get back to the level that we were at in fiscal year 2006. It wasn't until fiscal year 2016, in fact, when collections caught up to and passed what it was 10 years earlier in fiscal year 2006. Property tax is another economically sensitive revenue source, and you can see again that the peak, which occurred in fiscal year 2008, was followed by a pretty steep decline. This chart actually separates out the property tax that we receive, which is shown in the yellow at the bottom of each stacked bar chart item, and then the green part on the top is what was known as abated property tax, the part that is on the assessment roll, but we don't get to collect it. When the peak occurred, we were at $134.7 million in fiscal year 2009. That dropped a few years later down to $88.2 million. We are still, in fact, if you go all the way out now, what is a full 11 years later, we're projecting to be at $110.4 million next fiscal year. That's still a full $24.1 million less than we collected back in fiscal year 2009. It's that type of thing that has made it challenging for us to try to balance our budget and meet the service demands of the city moving forward. Looking at the revenue sources for the city, and primarily this presentation, at least the first several slides, deal with the city's general fund, the fund that provides the majority of the day-to-day services of the city. This slide shows you the major revenue sources for the city's general fund, the consolidated tax being by far the largest in the bluish color on the right-hand side of the pie chart, totaling about 54% of our overall revenues at $336 million. Property tax at the bottom left-hand side in the deeper orange color, totaling about $110 million. Together, those two revenue sources by themselves make up over 72% of our projected general fund revenues going into next fiscal year. So you can see those being the economically sensitive revenues that if the economy does start to teeter a little bit, we need to be very prepared for that, and that's why we have reserves, and we'll talk about reserves later in the presentation. The other primary revenue sources by category are licenses and franchises, about $98 million, and then other revenues that have been categorized together, $74.5 million. Some of the major expenditure assumptions for the proposed budget for fiscal year 2020, obviously we're intending to try to sustain as many programs as we can while at the same time expanding in priority areas of the City Council. We are currently in collective bargaining with our major bargaining units, all except for the CEA group. IAFF, POA, and PPA are currently in open negotiations, and we've had some discussions about how that's been going, but we hope that will be finished up here in the next few months, and we'll have more certainty moving forward about how much money we need in the budget for those
Madam Mayor
items.
Pro Tem, are we allowed to engage in questions as we're going through the budget?
Certainly.
Great, okay. So as we look at the expenditure assumptions as we spoke in briefing, and I just want to make sure that we get this on the record, because as we look at expenditures, there's a few things that I've requested, and I just want to make sure that the other council members receive what I've requested, since we couldn't be together all in the briefing at one time. But for the last 12 months of exit packages, there's been rumblings of some excessive exit packages. I think that the council, as the council, we set policy and budget. We've discussed, how the city is run. And as we look at our budgets, it's very, very important that we are very aware of what's happening. And also, I would like to see the differences between 2017 and 18, as we've moved people around from director to chief to, so we've moved people, we've moved positions. There's been an access of up to $50,000 in different salary ranges from 2017 and 18. And I think it really needs to be pointed out, because as we look at these budget numbers, it's not crystal clear. So I just really would like this budget to be crystal clear with us up here, and seeing where a lot of the dollars are, the hard dollars are. So that's the first thing.
Thank you for that, and we did receive your request, and we should have something for you in the next few days.
And you might mention that whatever you send to her, you send to the other council members too, so they'll get that.
Absolutely, that's our practice. We are including in the budget the increase in O&M costs that's based on the assets being turned back to the city from third parties, primarily taking back Cashman Center from LVCEA. The Woodlawn Cemetery contract is going to be expiring late next fiscal year, and we have to take that over in the month of May. And then the Central Library, we're taking that over in the next couple of months, and so that's budgeted. The operating costs associated with those facilities are budgeted in the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget. We are working towards some accounting changes to realign some of the costs that have been previously captured in our employee benefits fund. We have been including in that fund what we call non-productive hours, basically people's sick leave and vacation leave. That has been confusing for people, and as well as for myself, and so we're moving that back to the funds where those people actually exist, so we have 100% of those costs captured in those funds.
Well, that's part of the request, Gary, because a lot of times, so again, as I'm looking through the budget and trying to figure out why we're giving big fat checks to people that aren't taking vacations, I really need to see that. I mean, that's huge, and we might have to change a policy there to make sure we're just not, writing $30,000, $40,000 checks because people aren't taking vacation.
Yeah, certainly it's your prerogative to give us direction on what you'd like to see in terms of that policy. Those collective bargaining agreements that I mentioned earlier cover 90% of our employees, and so we are paying in
I'm not
accordance
talking about our union employees.
agreements.
I'm not talking about collective. I'm talking about us. I'm just talking about regular folks that are not union employees, that are not part of collective bargaining. We've gotten some fat checks out, and I just want accountability for them.
The budget also includes the full funding for the third group of marshals that we talked about over the 3-year program for funding the additional marshals. Last year's budget included the second tranche of those marshals, as well as a half year of funding for that third group. This year's budget for fiscal year 2020 will include the full amount that's necessary to pay for those marshals over the course of the full fiscal year. We also are including staffing for Fire Station 103. As you recall, the firefighters and their staff from Fire Station 3 have moved over to 103 during the reconstruction of that fire station. Once that fire station is complete, then they will move back, and we will fund up the Fire Station 103 through additional 13 firefighters, engineers, and captains. We have also included, for the first time in several years in the operating budget, a $5 million contribution towards capital. One of the things we've talked about is the fact that some of our capital projects do not have a dedicated funding source to be able to pay for them. So we have included an effort to try to fund up those capital assets so that we can stay caught up with what we need to do in terms of maintaining our infrastructure. Vacancy rate is continued to be applied to all departments. This assumes a 3% vacancy rate for all departments, with the exception of the fire department, which has been budgeted the last couple of years at a 6% vacancy rate. We talked about the Metro increase. The Metro increase was requested of us for fiscal year 2020 was a 6.4% increase, which worked out to about $9.6 million over what we contribute for fiscal year 2019. We have been informed just late last week that Metro has upped their revenue estimate for their property tax, as well as reduced their ask for some of their civilian positions. So we just are in the process right now of getting some new numbers that we will incorporate before we come back with the final budget discussion in May. But we think that's about a $2 million reduction over what they previously had been asking for.
And I would just like to point out that lots of times they get their new police officers and they end up on the strip, and we need to have them in our communities. We need neighborhood policing. We're having to, and that's why we have Shetland wanting to close off, and we have so many break-ins. So I just want to make sure that if we're going to pay that much money, which originally, before you got the reduction here, was almost $10 million, I think we better make sure that our needs are taken care of as well as the strip. That's all.
Thank you, and I know that we did hear your request at the budget workshop last week, and we are getting you some information on the deployment of those officers by area command. Also, the budget includes the transfer of certain positions that are currently budgeted in the general fund over to the sanitation fund. This is primarily related to downtown sidewalk, storm drain, cleaning, and sanitation efforts that are appropriate to be charged to the sanitation fund due to NPDES requirements. In terms of the dollars associated with the expanded requests, the additional 13 marshals, that's about $2.2 million. The addition of the engine company for Station 103 is about $1.9 million. I also wanted to mention that we have implemented the recommendations from the ICMA studies that were done for the Department of Public Safety and the Fire and Rescue Departments. So part of that is the addition of this third item, which is additional public safety and fire staffing positions, as well as an increase in our medical supply contract, which is about $2.5 million. We are increasing parks and medians maintenance funding. We have some additional parks that have come online, so there's funding for the park maintenance as well as the utilities in those parks included in the budget. I previously had mentioned taking back some of these properties. Cashman and Central Library maintenance will cost about $1 million, at least until we can find a new tenant for those properties. The increase in the Metro funding I previously discussed at $9.6 million. The cemetery, we're hopeful that we might be able to find another operator for the cemetery in the future, but currently the contract is expiring next May, and so we do have to put some money in the budget in case we're not successful finding a new operator. We have some miscellaneous contractual and ancillary items which are increasing in cost, about $1.7 million. And then we are asking for some monies to fund requests such as rate studies and additional vehicles for the new positions, and again, including the funding for the Downtown Loop Program and the Animal Foundation's Life-Saving Mission. The total of this list is about $22.9 million. And I should point out that the budget briefing notebooks that we provided have a tremendous amount of additional detail on all of these items. And I know there was also some additional requests to receive some of that information electronically so that you can sort it and look through it in various ways. So we're getting that information together for you as well. In terms of the additional positions recommended for this budget, we'll see in a few minutes how we're planning to fund these positions, but we are recommending 30 new positions be added to the general fund. There is a records position in the city clerk's office. There's 8 new positions in the Department of Public Safety that are primarily for administrative support, but what they allow us to do, and this was part of the recommendations from the ICMA study, is it allows them to therefore free up work that marshals are currently doing that takes them off their beat, so to speak, allows them to get more time in the field by having these administrative positions take over some of that work. The fire and rescue positions, again, are for Station 103. In fire and rescue, there's also additional positions, a senior management analyst, fire admin battalion chief, communications specialist, senior business specialist, and a fire fleet supervisor. In the operations and maintenance department, an additional maintenance worker and irrigation systems repairer. Primarily that's for the new parks that are coming on board. And then the planning department, the historic preservation officer, which is being funded by the Centennial Commission license plate monies. In the other funds, there's 12.5 additional positions recommended. The first 7 or so of those are in the sanitation fund, 2 in public works, and 5 in the operations and maintenance side of that fund. In the parking fund, there's a 0.5 FTE increase that's funded through parking fees. And then in the development fund, development services fund, there's 4 additional positions that are necessary to try to keep up with development activity. And then in our...
Can you define those a little clearer for us? Not right this second, but, and I really, those positions, I would really like to have them defined a bit more.
The building and safety ones?
No, the last one that you just said, the development.
Yeah, so those, the 3 and the 1 that are listed as building and safety, so those are additional inspectors
Okay.
to be able to stay up with the building activity that's happening. So right now, we're in a peak of development activity.
Okay.
So in order to satisfy the needs of the development community who are paying the permit fees, which are paying for the cost of these positions, we have
Okay.
to add staffing to be able to keep up. Now, we know that the development cycle will come to an end at some point. We think it's going to run at least 3 years based on the pipeline projects that are in place. And so as we see the development cycle start to come to an end, then we would be attritioning back down to a more normal amount of staffing given the workload at that time.
Okay, and could you just give me an idea of what that starting rate is?
Sure, we can get that for you.
Great, thank you.
And Gary, if I might, please, not necessarily on these that you've given us today, but in the past, could you let us know more? You have the term, I think it's administrative analyst. Is that the term that's used over and over in our budget or in our positions? And we don't understand what that is because it's in different departments, but we keep hiring new, what's it called? Is it administrative analyst?
Well, we have management analysts, and then
Maybe
we have
that's what it
senior
is.
management analysts. We have 2 levels. We have a management analyst 1 and 2, and then we have a senior management analyst position.
Yeah,
And
well,
those
we-
positions are prevalent throughout the departments because the job description is fairly broad and allows those positions to support the department needs.
And that, you asked us to look at maybe places we could cut, and I don't know what they do, so I couldn't analyze that. Maybe you can just let us know.
Sure, we can certainly get you those job descriptions and have a discussion about that.
Because those are part of the email that I had said, on those, it said we were looking at putting 3 different people in those positions. So they have to be clearer, and so what I'm learning in the last year and a half being on this council is lots of people, we're moving people around, we're changing positions, their pay scale's going up to 6 figures, and I'm just really not sure it's warranted. So I just really need to be crystal clear, and as the council, we set budget. So it's my big concern to making sure that we are putting people in the appropriate positions or not putting people in the non-appropriate positions.
And then the last position on this slide is in an internal service fund for fire communications. It's a communications specialist supervisor position. And that fund is paid for by both the city, the county, that contribute towards that fund. This slide shows you what I was alluding to earlier, which is as part of our efforts to address our structural budget deficit, the city manager created Team 2020 and reinstated what we call the Position Justification Committee. And we talked about this, I think, at your budget workshop last week, to be able to review all of the open positions as they come available. We have not been able to fund all of our expenses and all of our council priority areas, and the only way that we've been able to try to achieve the objectives that you set forward for us is to unfortunately have to make some reductions in other areas to be able to fund the things that are your highest priorities. And so what we've been doing with the Position Justification Committee is, as positions that have come open that are not in critical areas that are your top priorities, we've been freezing those positions in an opportunistic way to try to generate some savings to pay for some of the costs associated with the more important positions that you've asked us to fill. We are also now to the point where we've reached close to what our target is. Our target is to try to get to $10 million, and I'll show you why when we get to the 5-year forecast numbers. But we're trying to get to that target. We're currently at about $7.6 million, and we're trying to get to the point now where instead of being just opportunistic, we're going to be much more strategic. And so as we talked about last week, we're intending, starting next month with the Position Justification Committee meetings, that as we have new positions come vacant, that are not as important as some of the ones that are currently on the frozen list, we'll start swapping them out so that we get to a point where we're funding the most highest priority needs of all the city's departments in accordance with the priorities and the policy direction that you're giving us. So that's where we're heading with that. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate that we're having to do it because it's been somewhat painful for the organization to go through this exercise. But with our overall goal to not have to do any layoffs and yet still want to try to add positions in priority areas, it's the only way that we've really been able to achieve the objective of trying to fund up and staff up those priority areas without having to make reductions in staffing that have caused layoffs.
Well, thank goodness we haven't created layoffs. But again, for the past year, I know that the mayor pro tem, myself, I can't speak for other council members, but I know we've looked at positions. I know we've sent our requests in, and I know that they just fell on deaf ears. So this time around, I'm just requesting, as the council that sets the budget and policy forth, that our requests do not fall on deaf ears.
I think he'll provide all the necessary information that you need.
So what we've tried to display in this chart is that the additional positions are in the new column on the left. And so you can see 42.5 positions, 30 in the general fund, 12.5 in the other funds. And I mentioned earlier there's a transfer of 12 positions that went from the general fund over to the sanitation fund. But the one thing I wanted to point out is on a net basis, if you considered the frozen positions as being gone, which is what we're considering them to be, we're actually down positions as compared to the prior fiscal year. Even though we're adding 42.5 positions, we currently have frozen 77 positions. And it would take about roughly 10 more positions or so to get to our overall target of $10 million. And then this next slide shows you the city's employee history over the course of the last dozen or so years, starting with fiscal year 2008. At that point in time, you can see how the positions split between the blue portion of the bar, which is the non-public safety positions, and the public safety positions, which are the red portion of the bar. Now, since obviously the top priority of this community, as well as pretty much every community across the country, is public safety, generally speaking, those positions were basically held harmless during the Great Recession. So the majority of the reductions during the Great Recession came from the non-public safety positions, which is the same thing that happened in the previous two cities that I worked at during that period of time. But what you've seen coming back out of the recession is that the public safety side has actually grown and is now higher by about 12% of the level that it was at prior to fiscal year 2008, while the non-public safety section, it came back somewhat as compared to the low point, but it is still about 19% below the levels that it was at in fiscal year 2008. That's the struggle that we have with trying to fund all of the various service demands of the city.
And could I ask a question? When you ask the departments to cut, at one time, every department had to cut a certain percent. Did we do that this year, or did we do it a different way this year?
We did not do that this year, because we had done that I think two of the last 3 fiscal years. And at that point, we needed to make somewhat deeper cuts, so we had, I think, a 2% cut last year. I think we had like a 0.5% cut 3 years ago. This point, we needed to cut the budget by about 6 or 7%.
But I mean, did every department, did public safety, did fire, did they all have to cut the same percentage? Or did they?
Well, when we did the cuts, we actually held harmless the public safety departments. So I think for the most part, they were not cut last year.
And did you include, after one of our last conversations, a public meeting, I think it was, the fact that we think that there is public safety involved in Walker's department as far as parks and safety in parks? Repairing equipment?
We are working on responding to that question that you asked us. Right now, the operations and maintenance department, which is the one you're referring to, that Jerry Walker is the department head over, has a number of positions on our frozen list, and obviously having less positions makes it more challenging for him to run that department and try to maintain everything that he's obligated to maintain.
Right, and I know that you told us that wasn't considered public safety at the time. And at the time, then we mentioned to you some of the public safety concerns. For example, the benches I had that had rebar sticking out of them. I know a boy who was killed because he fell against rebar. And so, that's public safety. And we also had to do some medical expenses once for someone who sat on one of our wooden benches in the older parks. It's just public safety is involved in a lot of different things.
Well, certainly the challenges that we have and the ability of our management team to try to figure out the best way to make reductions in these other departments to be able to fund the additional needs in the public safety departments and the homelessness efforts has been extremely challenging. We're doing the best that we can. We don't have it 100% dialed in yet, but we're making progress towards getting where we're trying to get to. We have heard your concerns.
Okay,
Mayor
I
Pro
just
Tem.
want to voice them again, because I know Michelle feels sometimes we're not listened to, so I'm saying it over and over again. It's just that, quite honestly, I'd take some from the homeless and make sure that the taxpayers who are paying the money to take care of the homeless have safety in their parks and places. Thank you.
Thank you. So the other thing I wanted to mention with respect to this chart is we've had to live now for about a dozen years with significantly fewer positions in the non-public safety area. One of the things we've been able to accomplish, I think, is figuring out ways to work more efficiently and to be more effective in being able to provide a good level of service for our citizenry, but dealing with the restraints that we have on the revenue side. One of the things that we're putting money in the budget next year for is to try to bring in a consultant to help us re-engineer some of our programs and some of our efforts to figure out better ways to do things given the new lower staffing levels that we have. And for example, in the operations and maintenance area, I know that Director Jerry Walker is looking at various ways to try to reduce some of the costs associated with our parks and streetscapes so that we can still have a high level of quality, but perhaps have lower costs. So we are making a lot of strides and progress towards those things, but they have been a big challenge for us. These next couple of pie charts show how the general fund expenditures break out. The first one is by category. And on this chart, you can see that salary and benefits is by far the largest category of our expenditures. And in fact, the gray slice along the left side of the chart, which is it's listed as Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, that slice together with our salary and benefits slice really is almost entirely salaries and benefits costs associated with staffing, either our own staffing or the staffing at Metro. And those two slices together add up to about 79%. I think we were at 80% last year, so we're in the same ballpark as we were previously. This is not unusual for a city's general fund. The general fund primarily provides services that are provided by employees, and so this is by far the largest cost for our city's general fund. So anytime we start talking about trying to find ways to reduce costs, unfortunately, since 8 out of every $10 of the general fund is related to salary and benefits, you really can't reduce costs dramatically without affecting the number of positions that you have in a city. The next largest slice, the non-labor slice, is primarily supplies and services and consultant contracts, and so that is where the next largest portion of our expenditures are by category. Looking at it by function, and these functions are the functions that are described and mandated to us by state law, and one of the things we added to this chart is a way to try to capture some of those homelessness costs in addition to the public safety costs that are required to be categorized by state law, and Councilman Coffin, this was your request. So if you look at this, the public safety slice along the bottom right-hand side is right about 2/3 of our overall city's general fund budget. But however, as pointed out by Councilman Coffin, that has not included all of our homelessness efforts. And so if you look at the box at the bottom left of this slide, we tried to give you a caveat that helps to include that. But we spent about $15 million on homelessness costs in fiscal year 2018. So if you had added that to that public safety slice, that would bring that up from about 67% to just about 70%.
Your Honor, if I could ask a question. I'm not sure I would make this a question, but I thank you for putting that in there, because at least it highlights what we have. I suppose you could do a pro forma and say, well, now if you add that 15.2 in there, then our public safety expenses are X and X.
It's a little tricky because some of those costs are outside the general fund and are paid for by our community development block grant program. But we certainly are spending, we're probably spending closer to $20 million this current fiscal year on homelessness efforts, not even including the capital effort to build the homeless courtyard. And so what we're looking for now with the homeless courtyard is to try to find funding to pay for the ongoing costs associated with the new courtyard.
It's always good to remember that, and I don't know how much attention other people pay, but it's like homelessness is public safety because it's a curse on all the neighborhoods. That's, of course, it's a curse on the homeless because most of them don't want to be homeless, but our agreement with the courts says that we've got to have a place to put them, and that place we have decided through all our actions for the last 2 years is the courtyard. So we need more money for it, which means we need to try to get some more support for AB 73 and on and on and on. Anyway, thanks for the portrayal. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. This table shows you the city's general fund looking at a comparison of the actual costs and revenues for fiscal year 18, the estimated year end for fiscal year 19, and then the proposed budget for fiscal year 20. A couple things to point out. In the fiscal year 19 column, I mentioned during my presentation on fiscal year 19's year-end estimates that we had basically an over-collection of revenues compared to budget, and we were slightly under budget in terms of our expenditures. There's two numbers on that fiscal year 19 I wanted to point out, and they're towards the bottom of the expenditure section. One is the transfer out to capital of $13.9 million, and then the second one is the one-time augmentations. The capital will help us fund some of the backlog of capital projects that we have, and Councilman Coffin, again, this was one of the areas that you were concerned about. And then the $6 million is going to help fund some of the one-time augmentations associated with some of the requests for fiscal year 20, as well as trying to build up the fund balances in a couple of our internal service funds to get to appropriate reserve targets. The fiscal year 20 column does include the effect in the expenditure side of the $7.6 million worth of positions that are currently frozen. And so you can see that even though there's a $5 million surplus listed at the bottom of that column, that if we did not have those frozen positions, we would actually be in a deficit position of about $2.5 million, which is the primary driver behind why we've taken actions during fiscal year 19 to prepare for what we see coming in terms of a slowdown in the economy coming into the next several years. This chart just shows you kind of a trend over time. You can see that our revenues, which are displayed in the green line on this chart, declined fairly dramatically during the Great Recession and the several years thereafter. Therefore, we had to reduce expenditures accordingly to try to stay within the ballpark. We did rely on reserves pretty heavily during that time period, which is one of the reasons why it's appropriate to have a good amount of reserves, and we'll talk about our reserve targets later in this presentation. As we come out of the recession, you can see that we've experienced fairly healthy growth, but at some point we know that the economy will slow down again and that we'll have to be prepared for that action. I mentioned the 5-year forecast, and we went over the 5-year forecast with you a couple times, I think, over the course of the last couple of months. We have updated the 5-year forecast based on the numbers that are in the tentative budget. We do continue to update the forecast as we get new information, and we do keep our ears to the ground in terms of trying to listen to the economists and what's happening both regionally, nationally, and internationally, because they all come into play in terms of what happens here in Las Vegas, being a very tourist-dependent economy. We do see that when projecting out further on into the forecast period, that we are projecting a slowdown in some of our economically sensitive revenue sources, not in fiscal year 20, but in fiscal year 21, we dropped the growth rate for consolidated tax from 5% down to 1.5%, not a decline, but a slowdown. And then for property tax, the following fiscal year, in fiscal year 22, we dropped the growth from 4% down to 2%. Again, not necessarily a recession, but perhaps a slowdown. This moderate slowdown in the economy, coupled with an imbalance in our growth rates between expenditures and revenues, has caused these red bars to show up on our 5-year forecast. You can see in this first chart, which includes the effect of the frozen positions, that even with the frozen positions reaching the level of $10 million in fiscal year 2021, that we would still project a deficit that fiscal year of about $4 million. We have, during the course of this 5-year projection horizon, an average revenue growth rate of about 3.5% per year and an average expenditure growth rate of about 4.2% per year. That doesn't sound like much of a difference. It's about a 0.7% difference between the revenue growth rate and the expenditure growth rate. But 0.7% on a $640 or so million budget works out to be about $4 or $5 million shortfall every year. And because the budget, this number would compound, we would have to basically rely on reserves to be able to fund operations at the current level during this forecast period. The next chart shows what would happen if we didn't have the frozen positions. We would already be in a deficit position. We have currently about $7.6 million of frozen positions in the current fiscal year. If not for those frozen positions, we would currently be in a deficit. And then going into the fiscal year 20, we'd have to find other ways to reduce the budget or not fund some of the priority areas of the council to be able to balance the budget going forward. So that's kind of the challenge that we're facing when looking forward and seeing what's happening out there in the economy. This next couple of slides deals with the capital investment program, and so Jorge Cervantes is here to present those slides to you.
Thank you, Gary. For the record, Jorge Cervantes, Chief Operation Development Officer. So in putting together your capital improvement program, we use various funding sources, and this is a listing of what those sources are. Now, some of these sources come with certain restrictions. You can see a listing of some here, like the 5-cent ad valorem tax, which is restricted for only improvements to city facilities, buildings. You see the 1% room tax that can only be used for transportation type improvements. Community development block grant can only be used within those restricted areas. So some of these sources limit us what we can do with them. And then you see some other sources that are available that are more flexible, don't have some of those restrictions. Those include money that's left over as we close out projects that were funded in previous capital programs. As those are closed down, there's the fund balance left over. We're able to transfer it into the new capital budget to continue allocating needs. You see a transfer that Gary referred to earlier, the 13.9, that's really, we're anticipating being left over from fiscal year 19 that we're pushing over to meet some capital needs. And then in your operational budget for fiscal year 20, you saw a line item for $5 million that we're recommending to go into the capital project, again, to address some of those infrastructure and city facilities that we were trying to catch up on. And then the medical reimbursement of $9.5 million that came out of fiscal year 18. Some of the major projects that we're looking at recommending recommending for funding this year include some fire service apparatus. These are the fire trucks that the fleet needs to continue to be refreshed, and also some firefighting equipment, such as some of the respiratory equipment or some of the communication equipment that's reached the end of life cycle. We're also recommending some funding toward the Corridor or Hope Courtyard to finish off the funding that we need to be able to add the medical clinic to that component. And then last year, you funded the downtown courthouse, but that was for the funding of the building itself. This year, we need to fund the actual furnishing, fixture, and equipment, as well as the security system for that building. And then some strategic land acquisition, we're recommending $5 million put aside, so as those opportunities come up for some strategic land, whether it's for city facilities or for some economic development purpose, we have that ability to move quickly on that. So in your capital 20 plan, we have a total of about $41 million that we're allocating. Now, this $41 million doesn't include funding that we get from outside funding agencies. There's regional funding agencies that provide money for capital programs. Some of you sit on some of these boards, like the Regional Transportation Commission, Regional Flood Control District, some of these other funding sources that provide money for infrastructure, and you all, as those boards, provide the money, and we just carry it over into our program. Some of the major allocations we're doing this year with the $41 million, you see that $17 million goes toward public safety, which is about 40% of our budget, again, trying to address those priorities that we hear from you. And so 40% is going toward public safety. Another 30%, or $12.1 million, goes to city facilities, which is, again, trying to maintain our assets that we have, that we don't let them reach the point where they're no longer usable, but try to keep them in a usable manner. And then the rest of it's going into neighborhood recreational facilities and other needs by our departments. So in total, we're funding 64 new projects for fiscal year 20. But again, because this is a 5-year program, our actual 5-year program is about $1.1 billion, and that's where a lot of the outside funding sources come in. That's the major funding source that we have for capital that goes into a lot of our infrastructure needs. And so with that, I'll turn it back to Gary for the redevelopment agency.
Thank you, Jorge. Next couple of slides deal with the city's redevelopment agency. In terms of fiscal trends, the assessed value has increased at a good clip over the last several fiscal years, and we're anticipating that to continue for the next several fiscal years as we get through the development cycle that we're currently in, which, as you know, has several very exciting projects, particularly in the downtown area and in Symphony Park. So we should see that AV growth continue at a good clip over the next couple of years. In terms of the tax increment revenue growth associated with that, we're expecting a 7.5% increase in tax increment for fiscal year 20. We will see the Smith Center continue to pay back a $20 million note between the Smith Center and the redevelopment agency. We're expecting $5 million during fiscal year 2020. We'll continue to market the medical district, Symphony Park development, the office tenant incentive program. We are pursuing some additional funding for new market tax credits, and we have some additional allocation left to spend from the previous allocation as well. The contribution from the city, which you approved this morning, or to the city that you approved this morning, is $1.9 million for fiscal year 2020. And then we are still in the process of working through the canopy replacement project. And so as we look at the numbers on the next slide, you'll see how that plays through in our terms of our budget for the last couple of fiscal years. The City Hall Park development across the street, there's some money that you talked about previously for acquisition of land associated with that. and then trying to fund up some of our smart cities efforts at the Bank of America building and the Fifth Street School. This chart shows you, as we did with the city's general fund, the actuals for fiscal year 18, the estimate for fiscal year 19, and the budget for fiscal year 20. As I mentioned, the Fremont Street Experience Canopy project has made these numbers look a little bit strange. I wanted to explain why the numbers are what they are. If you look at the third row down of numbers, it's titled Other Contributions. In fiscal year 18, toward the end of the fiscal year, we issued bonds to pay for the Canopy project. That was for the redevelopment agency and the FSE's share of the Canopy project costs. The LVCVA, who is our third partner on that project, is paying us cash contributions towards the project. And so bonds came in fiscal year 18, which was the reason that they're showing a large surplus in that fiscal year. And those bonds are being spent down over fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20, which is why you see what's shown as a shortfall in red in the excess shortfall line in both fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20. But don't worry, because that's just the expenditure of those bonds towards the Canopy project. The overall health of the RDA is in good shape. Wrapping up then in terms of the total city budget proposed for fiscal year 2020, this chart shows you the general fund, which we talked about at great length, as well as the other fund categories, which were detailed in the budget detail books that we provided to you. In terms of a couple of colorful comments about these numbers and why they're up or down. In the special revenue fund area, we are making some recommendations on the fiscal stabilization fund, which I'll talk about in a couple minutes. The FSE project expenditures are primarily in fiscal year 20, which is part of the driver behind the increase in that fund category. Then we've had some additional federal funding, which has also driven the cost and the revenue side up on that category. On the capital program, the carry forward of projects which weren't complete in prior fiscal years is the primary reason why the budget looks much higher than what we're actually spending in the current fiscal year and the prior fiscal year, as well as the contributions that we receive from those outside agencies that Jorge Cervantes alluded to a few minutes ago. On the debt service numbers, you'll see the rather large increase. So several years ago in 2015, the council authorized us to do what's called an economic defeasance of the city's bonds for the City Hall project. Because we have not yet reached the call date for that bond until fiscal year 2020, that money has been sitting in reserves. In fiscal year 2020, however, we will use those economic defeasance proceeds to pay off those original bonds for the City Hall project. And so that's the primary driver behind that large increase in that category. In the internal service fund category, I mentioned that we're working on an accounting change to try to basically reduce the types of things that are accounted for in the city's employee benefits fund. And so, as I was mentioning, we're no longer accounting for non-productive hours, meaning sick leave and vacation leave, in the employee benefits fund. We're accounting for those hours directly in the fund where that employee is housed. And we're also direct charging PERS costs starting next fiscal year to the fund where those employees are housed. So we have more of the costs that are not double budgeted, because in the past they've been double budgeted. They're budgeted as an internal service fund charge, let's say in the general fund, and then the actual costs associated with the benefit have been budgeted in the benefits fund. That inflates our overall city budget. We're trying to streamline and make it more transparent so that we can see those costs in a better way and explain them better. So overall, our overall budget proposed for next fiscal year is $1.8 billion. The staffing level, which is shown here, is, as you see, up 42.5 positions from the previous fiscal year. But as I mentioned, because we have those frozen positions, the actual number of positions that we're funding are down from the previous fiscal year. And then you can see how the city's population has grown over time. And so one of our challenges is trying to fund our services with an increasing population, but with less resources that are more difficult to try to balance.
Your Honor, I have a question of Gary, if I could ask. Gary, the population numbers that you're using here seem low to me. Of course, 30 to 33 in just, I can't tell if that's a year to year or if it's a partial year to another year. Then it jumps up 11,000 in FY20, but I have a feeling it's higher than that. What are we using? What kind of estimates are we using?
So these are the official state demographer numbers that are the driver behind, for example, some of the state shared revenues like the C-tax formula. So we use those numbers in our budget presentation. I know our planning department may have some slightly different numbers. We'll find out some real numbers perhaps when we get the census information after the 2020 census, but these are the official state demographer numbers that we're using in this presentation.
So we won't get those official numbers for a couple of years, but doesn't the county have a pretty expansive and reliable population count they've been doing for a long time? I mean, I used to rely on it before I came here. I used to rely on it quite a bit, but maybe they don't assume that role anymore. Because I know we've got the utilities that do a pretty good count and an estimate, all of them, because they need to know that. I just had a feeling we're a lot larger than this.
So we'll get you an answer to that question.
Thank you, Gary.
The last area that I wanted to talk about before we wrap up the presentation is that, as part of our overall due diligence associated with the budget, we looked at pretty much everything that we could figure out how to address and make sure that we were in the best budgeting in accordance with the best policies possible. There are some guidance. The Government Finance Officers Association provides guidance on overall fund policies and budgeting policies. The last time the city's budgeting policies came to the City Council for review were in fiscal year 2014. At that point, you adopted a resolution adopting budget policies. They were primarily unchanged from the previous years. We have relooked at those, and I've got some recommendations that we'd like to float out today and discuss over the course of the next 6 weeks before we come back for the final budget adoption on May 20th. In the general fund, we currently have a fund balance target, a hard target of 12% of revenues, and an aspirational target of 20% of revenues. Most cities address their general fund balance as a percentage of expenditures, because what you're trying to accomplish is having money set aside to be able to pay for the continuation of services should your revenues become short of what you were estimating. And so one of our proposed changes is to change that target from as a percentage of revenues to a percentage of expenditures, which would make it in line with the Government Finance Officer's recommended budget practice. And then to set the target, since we're now at 20%, to set the target at a hard target of 20%, because we're currently at that target level, which I personally think is an appropriate level. The GFOA actually recommends that there's some variation in terms of a target for general funds based on the economic conditions and the economic the economy of that particular jurisdiction and how prone it may be to natural disasters. For example, a jurisdiction may want to have a lower fund balance target or a higher fund balance target. Because we are in an area where we're highly dependent on the tourism industry, I think it's appropriate for us to have a 20% fund balance target, which provides us somewhere between 2 and 3 months of cash to be able to fund services should we find ourselves in a declining revenue situation.
May I ask one more question, Mayor Pro Tem? Gary, it just dawned on me, and thinking in my mind's eye about the county islands within the city limits. I have a feeling that our official figure does not include the population in there. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're only including those that are within our jurisdictional boundaries.
Okay, then that does bear a subset, because there might be 100,000 people living in those or more. We're servicing them.
We are.
We are providing, everything that they need. We just break down in budgets certain services that we don't, but it's generally everything. I think we should be considering what it would look like if we really included all those people. Nobody else is servicing them. Well, they're in our, I'm sorry, a question came, how could you?
Well, I know the county believes that they're servicing them.
I know, we need to make
We
note
do
of it.
provide sanitary sewer services for those county islands, but I'm not quite sure about some of the streets and
Well,
parks
it's the
and
roads
things
they
like that.
travel. It is the way in and out of those islands that uses all our services. And so there is a way to carve that up, and I think we should pay attention to that.
If there's, excuse me, if I might just state, also, there's got to be something we are able to do. I mean, we've got to think hard about it, because it isn't just the roads. I've talked to the county about the roads and things. We went through that last thing, and they'll say, well, you use our parks, and of course they use our parks too. But the thing is, their problems are not solved by county people. Our office, and I bet you your offices too, get calls all the time. because they don't take care of the problems of individual, it doesn't seem they do anyway, of people who have, residents who have individual needs. And should we just say to them, no, you don't live in the city, so we're not going to work with you? No, we help them out. But there's just something we should be able to work, although they are mean. We tried one time to set it up so, they would cover their cost of half of a street. We had half, they had half, and then the county people just drove through our ballast. Am I saying the right word? Yeah, there's got to be some way that we can handle that. Maybe when we're off the council, we can just sit and think about that. There might be a way.
Thank you for those thoughts. One of the other things that we have that's basically a safeguard for the general fund is a fund that was established during the Great Recession period called the Fiscal Stabilization Fund. That fund was funded up with monies that were cobbled together by taking cash out of other funds and closing many other funds in the city. That fund currently has had a $13 million fund balance basically for the last 5 years or so. We believe that the general fund's current fund balance of 20% is sufficient for a general fund fund balance. And so one of the things that we're going to be recommending is to try to figure out a way to basically close that fund out and use that cash that's sitting in that fund to fund some other things, primarily capital projects that don't have other funding sources to be able to support them, as well as to think about a creative way to try to establish what we're going to call a sinking fund. That would be a place that we could put some of this money in to help pay for some of the services that might otherwise not be able to be continued during an economic downturn. For example, we put a couple of them on this list. The Animal Foundation's life-saving mission, we've brought that forward to you as a decision-making process every year and asked you if you wanted to continue funding it. We've got the money in the budget, the same $500,000 level that we've funded the last several years, but looking at the deficits going forward, we don't really see a way to fund those kinds of optional things moving forward without maybe setting aside some money now when we have the cash to be able to fund them over time. So we're proposing putting some of that money in what we're calling a sinking fund to be able to fund those kinds of programs that might otherwise be cut during a downturn. We have these internal service funds, and I'm going to go through a couple of them that we're recommending some changes to. The Automotive Internal Service Fund is where we pay for the maintenance costs associated with our vehicle fleet, as well as the replacement of that fleet when those vehicles reach the end of their useful lives. There currently is a fund balance policy of 10% of operating expenses and 25% of capital expenses from the prior year. Our recommendation is to change that slightly to continue to be 10% of operating expenses, but to fund 2 years of projected capital in terms of the fund balance policy.
Hey, Gary, quick, thank you. When you say 10% of operating expense, is that 10% of overall operating expense or 10% of operating expense of the department that the automotive operate, and does that fall under operations and maintenance?
So this does fall under the operations and maintenance department in terms of where it's managed out of, but this is sitting in a separate internal service fund. So this fund has mechanics and supplies associated with maintaining the fleet of vehicles. And so the operating costs are the people and the supplies and the equipment, and then the replacement cost would be the money that's set aside for replacing those vehicles. Every year we have a charge to the department that's actually the user of those vehicles to pay for example, the fuel costs associated with that vehicle, the maintenance costs for the replacement of tires and the tune-ups that those vehicles need during the year. And then they also make a contribution towards the replacement account for that vehicle so that when the vehicle needs to be replaced, the money has already been set aside. On average, we replace $4 to $5 million or so of vehicles per year.
Right.
But it comes in peaks and valleys. It's not always smooth over time. So the purpose of internal service funds is they tend to have spikes, and so you put the money aside in internal service funds, it handles those spikes through having reserves appropriate to be able to fund those spikes when they do occur.
But it would be for that particular department, though.
Just for that particular, just for the people from that department that work in this internal service fund. So it's the mechanics that are working in the vehicle replacement.
And that's where the 10% of the operating expense is for the 10% of operating expense for the automotive internal service fund. Thank you.
Right. Each of these funds has a similar policy, as we'll see going forward.
Gary, could I ask a question also? We replace, for example, fire engines or trucks we use. Do we do it at a certain number of years of the truck?
The answer is it depends, and so we have a fleet manager that handles most of the city's fleet of vehicles, and then one of the asks that we asked for as part of the budget going forward is actually for a fleet manager to manage the fire fleet of vehicles separately from the regular city fleet of vehicles. And so the answer is it depends. Certain vehicles which are high mileage use vehicles may be on a mileage basis. Certain vehicles which are not used a very number of miles per year may be more on an age basis. But the fleet manager has various criteria that he uses to try to determine the overall lowest cost, life cycle cost for those vehicles moving forward based on the salvage value of the vehicle when the best time is to replace it.
I asked that question because I read of where a city needed to do what we're doing right now. And I forget the number of years, but every certain number of years, they usually changed the vehicles because that was what they averaged out. However, in order to save money, they just added 2 more years, unless, of course, it was really something that was decrepit. They wouldn't keep it, but, and that might be something we might add another year, and that might save some money, too, because that costs a lot of money when we replace the vehicles.
Right. There is a sweet spot, and there's an answer that's more right than other answers, but there is no one answer for that question. I've worked in now 4 cities, and there's been slightly differing policies based on the determination of those fleet managers and the type of usage that those vehicles are getting. And so we're fortunate that we have a very good fleet manager who I think is doing an excellent job of trying to figure out where that sweet spot is to try to get the most salvage value from a vehicle that we're replacing, but also trying to minimize the major repair and maintenance costs associated with that vehicle. Obviously, you want to get rid of it right before it needs to have an engine overhaul, but figuring out when that is kind of tricky.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
So, and also, you know, as I look at these words, right, they're just not crystal clear. It's like proposed, 10% operating plus 2 times the average of the last 5 years' workers' comp claims paid. Give me a number. I don't want to do the math. I'm not Gary. Give me a real number. So is it 35%? Is it, you don't have to give it to me today, but I'm just asking, like, be clear. This is not clear.
And you probably wouldn't like the existing council-adopted policy then, because the council-adopted policy is 10% plus 25%. It doesn't have any numbers in it because it's a percent-based policy. But
so it's like 35%.
Well, it's 10% of one part of the budget,
right,
and 25% of another part of the budget. So we will get you some additional information. We just wanted to kind of float these ideas out and start the discussion because we have the next 6 or so weeks to work on the budget before we come back. On this page, the Employee Benefits Fund is one of the larger funds of the city, or at least it has been. We had been including in that fund not only the major things you might think that are included in that fund, like our city's health benefits program and our PERS costs, but we also have been including those non-productive hours, which was a very large expenditure item, but there's no real reason that it needed to be in that fund. It can certainly be in the funds where those people are actually receiving their salaries from. So we had a 25% fund balance target in the current policy. We're recommending that be reduced to 10% of operating costs plus 2 times the average of the last 5 years for the workers' comp component of that fund. That fund pays for all of our workers' compensation costs. Those compensation costs can fluctuate greatly over the course of several years, and so we're recommending that the policy be established based on the average expenditures for workers' compensation costs over the previous rolling 5 years. And then you'll see the same recommendation on the liability fund below to move towards 2 times the average of the last 5 years, because there's a lot of spikes in those costs, and you need to have some reserves associated if you do have a year that's worse than what you might expect. Oops, I think I forgot. The bottom one on this slide is the reimbursable expense fund. This fund is a fund that's established to basically pay for the costs that are in the general fund that are associated with the redevelopment agency. So they're just primarily pass-through costs. So we had that same fund balance policy of 10% plus 25%, but we really don't need to reserve for operating costs for salaries and benefits because we're just passing those costs through. So when we have a payday, we pay the employees out of this fund and we immediately pass the costs through to the RDA. So we don't need to have the fund balance policy be that high. So we're suggesting that we lower it to just the non-personnel costs. So those are the kinds of changes that we're recommending to the policies, and it would take an action, a resolution action, to update those policies. So we'll be continuing that discussion as we move forward in the budget discussions. In terms of the calendar, the state's required dates are shown on this slide. April 15th is the date that we have to file the tentative budget. So the proposed budget, tentative budget that we brought forward to you today, we will file that in the next week or so. We will get you a complete copy of that budget book that we file with the state. You already have the 2 large notebooks, and we know you've asked for some additional materials to be able to help you with your deliberations. We're happy to help you in any way that we can to get that information in your hands so that you can help us adopt a good budget for next fiscal year. The budget hearing, which is the state-required hearing on the final budget, is scheduled for May 20th. I know you all have that on your calendars already. That is a special meeting date because the way the state's budget calendar worked, we couldn't have it on one of our regular first or third Wednesday meeting dates. It didn't work out with their calendar, so we had to schedule a special budget hearing to be able to accommodate that in order to be able to file the final budget by the state-required June 1st. And then the final CIP budget has to be filed by August 1st. Just in terms of key budget takeaways and comments as we close the session today, as I pointed out during the 5-year forecast presentation, looking forward and projecting our revenues and expenditures forward based on current information and our best projections for the economic activity in the next couple of years, we see that there's a structural budget deficit in our 5-year forecast. It's about a 0.7% difference between the average revenue growth rate at 3.5% per year and the average expenditure growth rate of 4.2% per year. We're trying to make some expansions in the areas that we know that you're most interested in, primarily public safety and funding for Metro, marshals, and the city's parks to add additional security. We're looking at programs in the fire and rescue department to try to reduce our costs while maintaining higher levels of service. We know that we need to fund the homeless courtyard project that we're in the process of building right now. Currently, that is not included in this proposed budget. As you know, you approved a bill draft request to go up to the state legislature. We're still hopeful that something might happen with that, but we're not real positive at the moment. We do have some other alternatives that we'll be bringing to you if that is not successful to try to find a way to fund that courtyard project and the ongoing costs associated with it. We continue to work with the Team 2020 ideas. We mentioned at the council briefing yesterday that we had over 400 ideas that were generated through that effort. Many of those ideas are being implemented in this budget, but there's a number of them that are negotiation related that we've introduced. Some of them we've introduced during the negotiations this year with the bargaining groups, but that is as with all contracts, that is a 2-party agreement, so we can't mandate those changes. They have to go through the collective bargaining process. But we're hopeful that that may help reduce the growth rate in our expenditures. At least that's our goal going forward. And then there are many of those ideas also that will take several years to come to fruition. For example, we're in the process right now of replacing our aging telephone system. That's actually going to save us money, even though it sounds like we're spending money, but it has a payback of only a couple of years before we actually will see that savings. So those types of ideas and trying to figure out ways to work smarter and work better will help us minimize the impact on services by funding up some of the service areas that are your highest priority. And then we've made some recommendations with respect to vacancy management. I described the process that we're going through. We're trying to be more strategic over the course of the next several months to try to swap out some positions that are perhaps more important than some of the ones that are becoming vacant over the next several months.
And if I might also ask, because we had been asked to look where we might be able to save money, could you take the Department of Administrative Services and let us know what each of those people do, because that seems, of all the departments, to percentage-wise have grown most rapidly. And I don't know if we're just taking from one place to another or what's happening, but if you could let us know the costs for each of the positions and what the people are doing.
We can. In fact, I know one of the requests we got from Councilwoman Fiore was to give you, I think, a 3-year schedule showing how budgets and departments have changed over time. So
okay,
that
would
will hopefully help with that ask. And then the last one on this slide was, this is a good opportunity. We're in a period right now where revenues actually have been coming in higher than our budget. So it's a good time to set those monies aside and try to work through the backlog of capital needs that we have as a city. So we're recommending, as part of this budget, to put a lot of those monies towards those capital needs. And that is our presentation today. And we thank you for the questions that you asked, but I'm happy to answer other questions. And we have all the department heads here as well, if you had some department-specific questions.
Councilman Coffin would like to ask a question.
Thank you very much. This won't take long. Again, thank you for portraying the estimated cost of homelessness that's scattered across all the budgets. I hope, I don't know if Ted Olivas is watching this, but I don't think the team in Carson City has that number, and they need to be able to use that number to show it's one example of why we need to have Assembly Bill 73 or some other source of funds to take care of that, or we're just going to be displacing more and more of our budget into activities that rob services and frankly endanger the public. So that's a problem. I think I'm happy with what you've presented here. I suppose I would have wanted more out of Jorge's explanation of the CIPs and looking for more of that running accumulated deficit that I think we're running with our capital assets. And thirdly, I'm sorry that the legislative alumni meeting up there is the 17th, same day as a council meeting here, because some of us who were former legislators who have served in local government really need to be up there to help at least attest to what our teams are trying to tell the legislators. They're under tremendous pressure. At the same time, I think those who have been in both venues, local and state, can vouch for the support we need. Because right now, I think I saw one number, I think Ted and Kelly may have said it was like $100 million in unfunded mandates at this point for us. Now, most likely with the other local governments, we'll beat that back, but some of it will survive. And so you've got that, but you don't have it in here. It's not in our budget.
That's right.
So a lot could be done in the next 60 days in Carson City or less if we did make a show up there. And I would like to take the councilwoman up there, and I'll even buy her dinner if she'll go. And hey, we might even be able to call Beers and say, Beers, come on up, because we need bipartisan representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Gary, I just want to thank you and all of the staff. And so I look forward to working through this again as we did last year and every year as the budget comes forth. I think that the more we do these budgets and the more we request, the more you'll understand what we're looking for. And, you know, as I look at and ask questions on payroll and growths and, you know, these big payouts, it's not because I don't think each and every one of you deserve them, but when I'm looking at a red line and we're in a deficit, we must be responsible. So I just want to thank you, Gary, for all your hard work.
Madam Gary, thank you.
Madam Gary?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, through Madam Mayor Pro Tem, via Gary. In the first budget meeting we had, I had asked for some information. It might have been sent to me, and if it did, maybe I missed it. For a specific carve-out, I know it's within the budget of what dollars are being allotted for our Ward 5 Works project. Specifically overall, I know there's a CIP that's there. What is specifically budget for our 100 plan for the revitalization of the historic West Side? What money is being allotted for that specifically? We have our Veterans Plaza, which we talked about, and then just a breakout for overall homelessness. I would appreciate if someone can get that to me. And like I said, they might have sent it to me, I don't think, but maybe they did. If they did, I apologize, but somebody needs to send it to me again.
And then also last year, we had a ward-specific budget, and I know we looked at that, and I know I have to say, with Ward 6, I'll use our Thule Springs hay barn as an example. That was our first priority, is to get that hay barn up and fixed, and because of red tape and all this stuff, I finally got you some contractors to donate some stuff, and we're cleaning it up and making it nice. But I would like to also know with the Ward 6 budget, ditto what Councilman Creer said, and so where's our money, what are we doing? I know Jerry Walker's working on changing some schedules, so we have some of our maintenance departments on weekends picking up the garbages in the park because they're full versus that. So I would just like dates and times and dollars on Ward 6.
And then one more I'd like to have just for discussion. When I first got in office, we traveled looking at homelessness. And as you know, the travel that we did should fall under homelessness travel instead of out of our personal ward budgets for travel. So if I travel to National League of Cities, man, that might fall out of my budget. Or but if I'm going to San Antonio looking at workforce, then that shouldn't necessarily, in my opinion, come out of our specific award budget. It seems like it would fall under the category of the budget of the program that we're traveling on behalf of. And I wanted to know if we could discuss that, and if there's any more climate within the council to further sort of readjust those things. I guess the money's the same, but I think we get hit off of trying to assist in programs that are important to our wards. Thanks.
You know, we increased the ward discretion, we call the discretionary budgets last year up to $35,000 per ward. We've maintained that amount in the proposed budget for fiscal year 2020, but if you'd like to make a recommendation on that, we'd be happy to entertain that.
Well, that would be my recommendation. I mean, look, if we're allotting, I'm gonna say $20 million towards homelessness, and that includes all the ancillary things that go along with it, if we're going to different parts, looking at, and if some of my colleagues have traveled with us, I mean, should that fall out of our specific Ward 5 office budget? Or should it fall under the homeless budget? Right. It seems to me that it should fall under the homeless budget, because it's a homeless initiative which we're looking for. It's not a Ward 5 per se, I'm going to DC for a whatever. That seems to be different than specifically going for whatever it is under the premise of what it is.
You know, and I have to echo Councilman Creer, simply because the way the budget is designed, it's actually designed to attack elected officials. Yeah. So my emails get FOIA'd. I just got FOIA'd again, saying, I want to know where Councilwoman Fiore's gone with the city. Well, I traveled to San Antonio to deal with homelessness. Right. Is that a party? It's part of my city job. So why would that be in my ward budget, and why wouldn't that be defined? I mean, I don't need people, Las Vegas Review-Journal, saying we're going all over the world and all over the country on taxpayer dollar, not realizing we're fixing homelessness. So you guys really gotta get that together.
We certainly will take your direction, and that has been our past practice to have you charge all of your trips, including ones associated with programs, to your ward discretionary budgets. But if it's your direction to do that differently, we can certainly entertain that as part of this discussion.
Yeah. I would just like to have a conversation about it. I'm not the CFO. I'm not here to tell you which direction to go in, but it just seems as though it would fall under that versus, because it's not really discretionary, right? Yeah. It's not discretionary. Discretionary is much different than falling under a specific program that we are working on behalf of.
Mr. Creer, I think that is something we can discuss to see which way we go and what direction we go. And Gary, you'll make sure we are able to discuss that at some time. Sure. On the item that we have, item 41, before I start losing council members, we don't have to make a motion for acceptance, except that we accept your report. Is that correct?
Well, basically, we're just here to present the tentative budget that we're going to be filing with the state.
And that's all it is.
I don't believe that there's any action required today. But we are looking for your direction and any changes that you'd like us to see with the tentative budget moving forward before we get to the final budget hearing on May 20th.
So we don't need a motion, we just need to know that if we want to make suggestions, to let you know so that you can move forward.
Yes.
Thank you very much for such an excellent report, Kurt. It was really very good. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on quickly to instructing the city clerk to set the public hearing dates and appeals from the City Planning Commission meetings and dangerous buildings or nuisance litter abatements.
Thank you.
And then we will have our final citizen participation. We did have someone, I don't know if they waited through all this, Dorothy Barnes. Is Dorothy here?
Over there sleeping.
Is Dorothy sleeping? Oh, okay. Then we won't bother Dorothy. If she is not feeling well, we will not bother her. But I did call her name here, and if she seems to be getting awake, please let me know. And David Gomez, is David here to speak? David's an owner and president of the Nevada Peace Alliance.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, would you
Okay, good afternoon, David Gomez.
Thank you.
president of Nevada Peace Alliance, also a CCSD commissioner with AZAC. On my 4th term, I'm also deputy director of LULAC, League of United Latin American Citizens for Education. I'm also a legislative lobbyist for education and a business owner here in Las Vegas. My father built Carpinteria Corporation some time ago in 1977 here, and I believe it was in your district.
It is, on Charleston.
That statue there, or that big monument that's there, thank you for leaving it there and putting it in
We've
a
asked
historical
everybody
district.
to keep it there. We've asked everybody to keep it there. It's sort of part of our history.
Yes, because that's a replica of my Uncle Ted, my dad's brother. And he passed away, but I thank you for leaving it there, so every time I drive by, I get to see Ted, even though he's not with us anymore. As a business owner, I'm here today because I bought a commercial property with my wife on 133 Northeastern Avenue, and I'm in Coffins area. And there's not an issue with that. It's just that the city of Las Vegas needs to fix some kinks with their business licensure and their business department with license, because I applied for a license, nobody never told me to go to planning. Now, our first business that we have there, we do document preparation, we have taxes, we have services that we help with, tickets and other legal things that we do out of there with attorneys. But when I divided the building up and I followed every procedure, went to the DMV, also did the Secretary of State and my bonds and everything, I actually came out of my pocket almost $4,000. Then when the fire department shows up, they say, hey, you know what, I'm sorry to tell you this, but did you talk to planning? No, I didn't. Nobody told me to. After I already paid the city and I gave all the money to the city. Then they said, well, unfortunately, you're not in a zone that you can open a dealership in the back part. I said, well, we have C1, C2 all around us. We have all these different zones around us. What do I need to do? Well, you need to pay $5,000 and you need to make sure you put yourself on these agendas and get these things done before we can move forward with that. And there's no promise. So after I spent X amount of dollars, that it's obviously not your guys' fault. It's no one's fault up here. But someone in that office is not following some kind of procedure and they're not going through a protocol and saying, hey,
I think
please.
those comments are very good comments to make to us, and I know our licensing person is not here, but Karen, could you just let him know whom he should call? Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. I didn't see you in the shadows there with Robert. Would you, Karen raised her hand there, if you would go talk with her, because I mean Mary, excuse me, Mary, and if you would, because she is, and Karen, all of them are working hard, and Mary's working very hard in licensing to make it better, because you're right. And I wonder why sometimes that planning doesn't tell the people to come to our office so they can talk with us also during that time. So you'd want to go to planning and licensing and our office in case there are other problems of which planning may not be aware.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I did see David in a brief recess. Was it this morning or this afternoon?
Yes, it was this morning, sir.
And anyway, Ito from our office has met with David, and we're going to try to help in any way we can, if it's possible. Thank you.
Yes, and he did explain to me to talk to Ito, and I did. But, I just wanted to, okay, thank you, Mal. Your Honor,
And she will help you, and we are grateful that you come to us and let us know, because sometimes you're so busy with so many things, you don't catch these glitches.
Yeah, and it's no problem. I mean, as long as someone informs me, and I will follow procedures and do the protocols as required of us as business owners and as citizens here. My son, I have 6 children here, and that's a lot of children, but maybe I didn't have enough TV, who knows?
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things where I work with the community, I give back to the community, and my services to my own business, it pays for me to be able to volunteer to Clark County School District and to do the legislating lobbyists and different things like that, non-paid, because I ask nothing from no one. I do it as a service because it is my duty and my civil service to the community. I love Las Vegas. It's my city. It's my home. It's my children's home. My son became a Marine. He left Charles I. West Prep. I fought for 10 long years for Charles I. West Prep Elementary School to be built. with a lot of the ministers in the West Las Vegas area, with Marzette Lewis and a lot of different people that were out
And you
there.
don't even know that I was the vote that got you that.
Thank
And you
you.
didn't even know that some of the people in the ward I represented were not happy with me because I did that,
But you know what? It was a good thing, and that was an excellent thing for those kids there, because it's better that they had a school than to have a portable.
And I knew that my ward would get the money donated some other way
Yeah.
because they had more monies behind them, and they did. So then we ended up with 2 schools instead of 1. But I'm very happy that you helped there.
That's an excellent thing, and I appreciate it, because it helps all the children, and it lets them see a hope, and it lets them know that somebody does watch and do care about the things that they do go through.
Yes, so
You know, but I just wanted to, leave the comment that, I heard some of the things with your guys is with your fleet, you guys should try to look at things like UPS. UPS is one of the largest fleet companies that have fleets, and they just follow the leader. When they have things that break down, I'm pretty sure that you can follow some of those examples. And as an ex-fighter for UFC, I know one thing. When I used
Madam
to
Mayor Pro Tem?
When I used to train,
How long is public comment?
how long is public comment?
I'll cut it out right now.
I will tell you.
I'll get out your face.
Obviously, I was over-interested in what you were
Yeah.
saying.
But, I appreciate you guys listening, and I just wanted to let you guys know that, some things need to be fixed, and it does hurt when we do run into these brick walls.
Okay, and
I
we thank
appreciate
you
it.
very, very much for coming.
Thank
We'll
you.
move quickly to item 73 before I lose. Oops, he left already, didn't he? I was going to go right to Anthony. And here I... And we have Coffin who's passing, and not really, I hope, but in a few years. All right, and how about Michelle? Would you like to say something?
Do you see this mask that I'm wearing on my face? It's because we are going to be giving these out at our movie in the park for The Incredibles this Friday at 7 p.m. At our Centennial Hills Amphitheater Park. So come and watch The Incredibles and get your Incredibles face mask. We'll have free popcorn and water. And we have completed stuffing our 35,000 Easter eggs for our egg extravaganza on Saturday, April 13th at 10 a.m. We're going to be having 2 big fields. We're having a special needs field with our own bunny there, and we're having our other field with our own bunny for all the kids to come out and do an Easter egg hunt. And it's just going to be amazing. And that same day, on Saturday, April 13th, after we do the Easter egg hunt at the Mountain Ridge Park, Durango Drive in Elkhorn, we are going to listen to our Travis Brass Band at Centennial Hills Park, U.S. Air Force Band, of the Golden West. So that's going to be on April 13th at 2 o'clock as well, and they are incredible. If you haven't heard them, you're going to love them. And I have to tell you, prepare for our huge, big Cinco de Mayo on May 5th, Sunday, May 5th, from 1 p.m. to 6:30. We are having our big band, our Jesus Marcos del Sol Mexico band there, and Commissioner Kirkpatrick and Councilman Stavros Anthony. We'll be doing, all 3 of us are doing this big event together, and we're going to have mariachi bands from all of our high schools. It's just going to be huge and big, and tacos and tequila and all the stuff that happens in Ward 6 stays in Ward 6, and we're going to have a big party. So come on out, and I'm even going to invite the press so they understand all the thousands of people that attend our events out there. So now, some serious stuff. I have to tell you, I'm very excited. We have located Marcus Mendez, who is a 16-year-old male. So he has been located, thank God. And we still have a missing juvenile, Angel Keel. She's 16-year-old female, 5'4", 144 pounds. Please, if you see her, please call Las Vegas Metro Police or our Nevada Child Seekers. And I have to tell you, Nevada Child Seekers do such an incredible job finding these children. We're also missing Haley Horowitz. She's 14. She's only 14. She's a female. She's 125 pounds. She's got blue eyes and black hair. So please help find Haley. And I want to just say have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you on our next council meeting.
And Mr. Creer?
Thank you very much, Madam Pro Tem. So I'll be hosting a book signing reception in honor of Senator Joe Neal for his new book release, The West Side Slugger. This book tells his lifelong fight for social justice and his 32-year tenure with the Nevada legislature. So join us this Saturday, April 6th, from 1 to 3 p.m. at the West Las Vegas Library, which is 951 Lake Mead Boulevard. If you have any questions, you can always contact my office at 702-229-5443. April 10th, the Nevada Preservation is a local historic preservation nonprofit who focuses on the retention and revitalization of our community's historic buildings and resources. NPF's newest branch focuses on community revitalization, and NPF recently established a revolving fund for neighborhood revitalization in the historic West Side. The revolving fund is a real estate development tool that will focus on rehabilitating vacant and abandoned properties, starting with vacant homes located within the historic West Side community. The primary goal is to revitalize some of the vacant, derelict housing that's prevalent within the historic and older neighborhoods in the West Side. NPF will restore the homes back to their historic quality, focus on vacant housing that was built in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. The next meeting is taking place Wednesday, April 10th, from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the historic West Side School. For more information, call the Nevada Preservation Foundation at 855-968-3973. Bolden Area Command will host a farmers market at Liberty Baptist Church on Thursday, April 11th at 6501 West Lake Mead Boulevard on the corner of Lake Mead and Torrey Pines. They will have a free healthy fruits and vegetables while supplies last. You can always contact our office to find out more information. Strong Start Go will host an open house on April 12th from 9:30 to 1 p.m. behind the West Las Vegas Arts Center located 947 West Lake Mead. A fun family event is planned. You will have an opportunity to tour the new mobile preschool and talk to the preschool instructors. Also, information will be available about Strong Start Preschool Academies. Refreshments will be available while supplies last. For more information, call the office 702-229-5443. April the 20th, we have an egg hunt. The City of Las Vegas, the Armed Forces Chamber of Commerce, KCP Power 88 Radio, and other community organizations will host an egg hunt for children between the ages of 5 and 12 years old on Saturday, April 20th at 10 a.m. at the historic West Side School, 330 West Washington Avenue. There will be bouncy houses, carnival games, contests, prizes, live music, special guests, workshops, vendors, and refreshments. And the event is part of the We Are One community tour. For more information, visit www.armedforceschamber.com. Once again, we're going to have our Ward 5 community conversations, and it'll be held on Thursday, the 25th of April, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. back at Tenaya Creek Brewery, 831 West Bonanza Road. We had our one in the morning last week, which went great. Come and join in the conversation, discuss matters important to you. For more information, contact my office, 702-229-5443. The West Las Vegas Arts Center is registering for Saturday classes in the Summer Performing and Visual Arts Summer Camp, which is absolutely amazing if you haven't seen them. For registration information, visit recreation.lasvegasnevada.gov, and free income tax separation for seniors and low-income residents. Volunteers from AARP and Internal Revenue Service Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program offer residents free assistance with personal income tax form preparation and electronic filing at 5 City Las Vegas senior or community centers through mid-April. This service will be provided at the Doolittle Senior Center by appointment. For more information, call 702-229-6125 or 702-229-6454. Don't forget, you can always get in touch with us on social media, Twitter at Cedric Creer, Instagram, Councilman Creer, and Facebook, Councilman Cedric Creer. Thank you, and thank you to all the voters once again in Ward 5 for your continued support. It's humbling to serve you as your Ward 5 Councilman.
That was nice. Sound like a radio.
I wanted to move quickly. Lastly, I want to say before I get into what's already been scheduled that April 6th, beginning at 5 o'clock, we're having a thank you appreciation gathering with food and entertainment and everything, and it's to say thank you for the people who live in Ward 1 and also for all the staff that has helped Ward 1. So I hope as many of you can come because I've served that 14 years and I couldn't have been elected last time if someone hadn't just stepped in and taken care of the election, quite honestly, and I couldn't have done anything anywhere near what I've accomplished if it hadn't been for everybody who works here in the city who's helped us. And please bring your families, and also thanking everybody within the Ward 1 who started the neighborhood associations, who's been in there and who's showed up for short-term rental problems, and who's been here all the time backing what we're trying to do in innovative and exciting ways in Ward 1. So come April 6th, please. It's at the park, and I can't remember the name of the park. Sorry. Where is it? That's what I thought it might be. Bob Baskin Park at 5 o'clock, April 6th. Going to have good food, going to have great entertainment. Bring your children, just have a time and relax. And let's be happy and savor what all of us together have been able to put together that has helped Ward 1. I wanted to say a last reminder on the Neighborhood Partners Grant. I know I mention it often, but it's so important for districts that are within the poor areas. The application deadline is Thursday, April 18th, just about 2 weeks from now. The program grant's set to $5,000, which must be matched by the neighborhood. And to be eligible to apply, neighborhood associations and homeowners associations or business associations must have a primary purpose, which is neighborhood improvement, be located within the city of Las Vegas, be registered with our Office of Community Services, have a majority of the association members living or operating businesses in the neighborhood, and demonstrate neighborhood support for the proposed project and program. We've had beautification. We've had fake dogs that were warnings in senior little homes, mobile homes. We've had many, many different things that have come and helped our neighborhood, and it's not hard to raise the matching funds because for every call you make, for everything you do, you're paid the amount of money that a regular person would be paid, and that's part of the match you make. Then we have our neighborhood college, the city's new program, which helps educate residents about different city departments, programs, and resources. And the first neighborhood college series is within wards 1 and 2, although residents from other wards are welcome as well. The program runs 7 weeks on Thursday nights from April 18th, which is coming up again in about 2 weeks. It'll go to June 6th. For more information and to reserve your space in the program, please contact 702-229-2555. And we're going to have a Southern Nevada Health District Baby Bash on Friday, May 3rd from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the district office located at 280 South Decatur Boulevard, where the old Target used to be located. The event will include immunizations, vision screenings, and a health fair. Parents should bring their child's immunization records and insurance card. For more information, please call the health district at 702-759-0850. And lastly, as we make our jaunts into the neighborhood to see how things are going, we see all those all those very, very high weeds. We've had quite a bit of rain this winter. When rainfall is higher, so are the grass and weeds. And going through the ward last week, we noticed the overgrowth in all parts of the ward. And we want to remind the people who own homes that city code requires homeowners to trim weeds and grass that are over 8 inches in height. We realize this has been a wet few months that we've had. We realize that we all have weeds growing highly. We also realize even in the city we can't keep up with these weeds because they're popping up all over the place. So please be sure, however, as residents to make sure the weeds are cut or taken away somehow. And I just want to say thank you, everybody. I'm really having fun these last 3 months. The mayor told me it was 3, so I guess it is. And it's a wonderful group we're working with. We have our disagreements, but I think that we'll work out everything because we're very nice people. All of us. Take care. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Well done.
That's it.
Well done.